Mayor, you may proceed.
Thank you, Max. Good afternoon, everybody. It is Friday, October 15th, 2021. This is a virtual regular meeting of the Commissioners of the City of Rehoboth Beach. I'd like to call this meeting to order at exactly 2:00 p.m. I'd like to start off by calling roll call. If you would, Commissioners would please take a wave so we can let the public identify you easily. Commissioner Tony Sharp.
Here.
Commissioner Susan Gay.
Here.
Commissioner Patrick Gossett.
Here.
Commissioner Edward Chanowski.
Here.
Commissioner Tim Bennett is here. Commissioner Jay Legree.
Here.
And I'm Mayor Stan Mills. We've got a full complement, so we're able to formally conduct business today. Thank you all for being here. I'd also like to recognize that present are the City Manager Sharon Lynn, City Solicitor Glenn Mandalis, Public Works Director Kevin Williams, Matt Janis, Building and Licensing Supervisor, Chief Keith Banks of the Police Department, and Evan Miller, the newlywed Evan Miller. Projects Coordinator is also with us. Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to welcome everybody that's watching virtually. And I'd also like to welcome and thank those that have pre-registered to speak. And I wanted to read those names. And Ann, if you could double check, make sure I've got them all complete. There are 16 that registered to speak, including Carol Everhart of the Rehoboth Beach Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce, Dan Slagle and Greer Manival from the Rehoboth Beach Main Street, Walter Brittingham, Richard Perry, Frank Cooper, Stephen Kaufman, Tom Evans, Jan Conacy, Julie Davis, Carol Diefendorfer, Cindy Lovett, Carlton Savage, Jean Langford, and Suzanne Good. Hopefully we hit everybody there. And of course, we do have Tom West, the city planner, is online in case there's any questions for him. With that, I'd like to make mention, as I like to do, that support documents, when they are available ahead of a meeting, are embedded into the agenda. And there are many, I think there's 140 pages of support documents in this meeting agenda for you to read at your leisure. Please note that we have a lengthy agenda there. I'd like to identify that if you look in the agenda, they're embedded in there. There are 16 pieces of correspondence. I would like to suggest that because of the long meeting, potentially long meeting, that if you are pre-registered to speak, that you make mention of your letter and only go further if you have something to say that's not in your letter, that's different or augments your letter, because we're trying to save time here. And again, all your letters are embedded for the public to see and for all the commissioners and staff to see. Also like to make note that because of the potential for a lengthy agenda, I may change some things around. We may abbreviate a topic or two, and that won't be decided until we see the duration of the meeting. With that, I've mentioned the correspondence, 16 pieces. Approval of minutes, we don't have any to approve at this meeting, and we'll go right into City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have one street aid expenditure to Delmarva Power in the amount of $9,482.71 for streetlights.
We need a motion and a second to approve the expenditures or the payment of the invoice.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Gay and a second by Commissioner Sharp to authorize city manager to pay Delmarva Power the amount of $9,482.71. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye, but also hold your hand up to signify aye. It's just easier for recording to identify that.
Aye.
Aye. All right. So we have the Delmarva Power expenses are passed unanimously. Thank you very much. City managers?
Yes, thank you. Very proud to mention that our water operator of the year for the Delaware Rural Water Association has been named to our own Rocco Esposito in the city's water department. The award each year is given to a licensed water operator who has demonstrated excellence in performance of daily responsibilities while also exhibiting outstanding customer service support. So we congratulate Rocco for this year's award. The city's annual auction will take place on Saturday, November 6th at the Rehoboth Beach Convention Center. Bidding begins at 9:30 a.m. There'll be vehicles, equipment, furniture, lost and found items, the police retrieved, and even some of the city's old single-head parking meters will be available at the city's auction. The items may be previewed from 3 to 5 p.m. Friday, November 5th at the Convention Center. Also, the VFW Post 7447 will host its annual Veterans Day Community Ceremony at 11 a.m. Thursday, November 11th at the bandstand. The rain location for the ceremony is the Rehoboth Beach VFW Post Home, located at 101 State Road. We have upcoming projects in the Public Works Department. We're moving forward this fall with water main replacement, water meter replacement, and annual street paving projects. Some of the work that is being done includes the water main replacement and street paving in the first block of Olive Avenue and the second block of Maryland Avenue, water meter replacement outside of the city at Rehoboth Beach Gardens, Bay Harbor Drive, and Eagle Drive, and annual street repairs, which will begin Monday, next Monday. Lake Drive from Scarborough Avenue to Bayard Avenue, Martin's Lane from Christian Street to the library, Olive Avenue from the boardwalk to 2nd Street, Stokely Street Extension from State Road to the end of Stokely Street Extension, and Surf Avenue from Columbia Avenue to Lake Avenue. That will be starting this coming Monday, the 18th of October. We mentioned before the State Road Pump Station is in disrepair. GHD engineers conducted an inspection of the State Road Pump Station just yesterday to help the city determine how best to move forward in addressing the interior concrete issues that were recently discovered, and we expect to hear GHD's report next week. The city will be hosting a BB Healthcare flu shot clinic from 9 a.m. to noon next Wednesday, October 20th at the Convention Center. Flu vaccines, both regular ones and high-dose vaccines, will be available while supplies last to those 18 and older on a drop-in basis. No appointments are required. We do this now on an annual basis. That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions for the city manager?
Yes, I do.
Commissioner Gossett?
Yes, just a request. I know we have approved the repaving contract a couple months ago. If that map that was a part of the proposal could be posted on the website so our residents can know exactly what the areas that are going to be repaved, can see it visually on the map. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. With that, we'll go to the city solicitor's report.
Thank you, Mayor. I think all the commissioners are aware of it. For the public, the Ocean Baymart case was decided this week. The city was successful. Court of Chancery found that the plaintiff didn't have vested rights to continue with their proposed plan. There is an appeal that's available that could be taken to the Delaware Supreme Court. We have no indication yet whether there will be an appeal taken or not. But effectively, if the case ends here, any residential subdivision of that property would require a new application before the city's planning commission. The clear space litigation is in its very early stages. We're in the process right now of working out a briefing schedule to get that litigation moving forward. That's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you very much. If there are no questions, we'll keep moving on. The next topic is departmental reports. You'll find embedded in the agenda is the police department report and the report from building and licensing. The next on the agenda is board and commission reports. You'll find in the agenda is the planning commission report from Chair Mike Bryan. And for there, we'll go to committee reports. Embedded in the agenda is the Boardwalk and Beach Committee report. Commissioner Jay Legree is the chair. Would you like to say anything further, Commissioner?
Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner Sharp, go ahead.
did I just lose my place, or I have a question about the Planning Commission update?
You can, there's nobody here to answer your question unless it's Glenn, but yeah, we can go ahead.
I'm curious, when it talks about the October 22nd meeting having been canceled, is there a reason for that?
I think the purpose
On
of
the
that,
CD, it's on the second page of the report regarding the CDP.
I think the purpose of that meeting was to discuss the CDP that was issued on, or the first draft of the CDP that was received by Planning Commission members earlier this month. I think as a matter of efficiency, the chair and perhaps the other officers, I'm not sure that he had to discuss it with other officers, determined that receiving a first round of comments from the planning commissioners in written form would be helpful to him and the consultant before they came together in a meeting to discuss those comments. So I think he canceled it for that reason.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to say publicly that the time for this to be done is ticking. I'm sure that's stated very obviously to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Now we'll go to Commissioner.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I've had
go ahead.
also a question, just either to the city solicitor or city manager. I know that the schedule was to present a draft of the CDP to the Planning Commission on October 11th. I'm just curious, has that been accomplished?
Yes,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
yes.
Okay, thank you. And second question, also in their new business report, point 2, Glenn, perhaps you could address this. It says the Planning Commission concurred with the chair's request to ask the Board of Commissioners to amend the city code in order to establish the date prior to a Planning Commission meeting by which the applicant must take any written submissions to the Planning Commission. Any idea of how that will be brought forward to the Planning Commission, to the Mayor and Commissioners for action?
So I think that there's been, my understanding is that the chairman of the Planning Commission had prepared kind of a short blurb that's going to get transmitted to you all, which is basically going to ask you to take up an ordinance so that there would be a date certain by which things would need to be submitted to the Planning Commission. Recently they've had some very late submissions, literally a day or two before a meeting, and they're trying to get some consistency with those submissions.
And do you know and I'm not specific for mayors, but is that addressing applications, site plan review also, and preliminary review?
Well, there are a few things in the code, Commissioner, that already have dates. For example, I believe site plan reviews have to be in 28 days prior to the Planning Commission's next meeting, and perhaps there's already set time for subdivisions as well. What we've been finding on the Planning Commission is that like supplemental things or supplemental submissions that are, large filings are coming in late, and the planning commissioners are not having time to review those. So I think it addresses more those supplementary filings than the main applications, because I think those mostly have deadlines already in the code.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else on the Planning Commission? If not, now we'll go to Chair of the Boardwalk and Beach Committee, Commissioner Jay Legree. Do you have anything you want to add in addition to your written report?
No, Mayor, that's fine.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner. With that, we'll go to liaison reports. The liaison to the Chamber of Commerce is Commissioner Gay.
And I believe Carol is with us today.
I am. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner. I have several things. One is the Association of Chambers has, which is every chamber in the state, has an in-person meeting scheduled with Senator McBride on November 2nd in Dover. And this is really regarding potential legislation that has to do with extended employee leave and what impact that would have on the particular business. Redistricting, I have not had any notice of decision on that. I understand they will have a decision on redistricting by the end of October. The 2022 visitor guide is in process, scheduled to go to the printer in early December. So if we have any information from the municipality that we'd like to put in there, time is ticking. Sea-Witch, the first run of the program has arrived, the printed program. It has been mailed to all the businesses and the leadership. If you've not received it, you should have it in the next day or two. Also, the notices to all of the restaurants that the barriers are being removed on October 27th have gone out. There's been several blasts, and we will also be sending a separate individual email to those businesses so that we know we've covered as many bases as we can. Notices for any impacted residential area where the walkers lineup is, that type of thing. Those will be done before the end of next week so that they're in place by next weekend, giving them plenty of time for notification if they're coming down during Sea-Witch. Any closures for parking, that type of information will also be disseminated. We've had the meeting with the city EMS, city staff, fire department, police department, DelDOT, and DART, and everything seems to be in place. We seem on schedule, so our fingers are crossed that we covered our bases. There's still the last minute things to do, but basically we are on our schedule.
Thank you.
Carol, just,
Thank you, Carol.
Carol?
Commissioner
Yes.
Sharp?
did you just say that the barrier removal, the date was October 27th?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. We appreciate you coming on board today.
Thanks, Mayor.
Welcome.
With that, we'll go to the liaison is Commissioner Jay Legree to the Historical Society. Commissioner Legree.
As everyone knows, the beach ball is the major fundraiser for the Historical Society each year. And because of the pandemic, we can't all get together and have a big ball at the country club like we usually do. But this year, what we're doing is something that we call the dine and drive. What you do, you order your meal. It's the same type of meal. It's a great meal like you have every year. And then you drive over to Kings Creek Country Club and pick up your meal at the time. The price is the same as it always is, but the ticket selling stops tomorrow at noon. So if you haven't bought your ticket yet, you have until tomorrow noon. However, the silent auction, and there are lots of neat things to sell and to bid on, starts tomorrow at noon, and it will go on until the 23rd of October at 8 p.m. And the 23rd of October is when you drive over and pick up your meal. So all of that's going to work together, and there'll be music playing in the background, and you'll be able to bid on silent auction all night until 8. And but the bidding starts tomorrow. So take a look at rehobothbeachmuseum.org. Click on the Dine and Drive logo, and you'll get all the information you want. And I encourage everybody to join in, have a great time. Oh, you get a bottle of wine with your meal, so you'll be able to have a great time. And then we'll all make a lot of money, and the Historical Society will be happy. Any questions? Okay, thanks a lot, and we'll see you all there, but it'll be next year.
Thank you, Commissioner. Appreciate it. With that, we'll go to the liaison to Rehoboth Beach Main Street, Commissioner Ed Stranowski.
Sorry about that. I think we've got Dan Slagle on the line.
Good afternoon, Commissioners and Mayor and City Manager. This is Dan Slagle with Executive Director of Rehoboth Beach Main Street. I just wanted to go over a couple of things that we have been working on. We are working on the Rehoboth Beach Cottage and Town Awards, the nominations. The nominations are open for the Rehoboth Beach Main Street 2021 Cottage and Town Awards. The awards recognize residential, commercial property owners who contribute to the charm and beauty and the history of Rehoboth Beach through architectural and landscape architectural renovation, restoration, and preservation. The property must be within the city limits. We do have all nominations at this time. Also, we've created an opportunity page on our website. A lot of the downtown merchants are still hurting for help. Some of them have to close during the week because they don't have enough help. We have stepped up to the plate to create an opportunity page to have help wanted for downtown. So hopefully we can get some workers for downtown. Also, Rehoboth Beach wants to help out with the decorations for this season, for the 2021 season. We're asking for holiday elves, volunteers, because we have a staffing shortage. So we're trying to get volunteers to help out for decorating again downtown. We need about 15 people to help. So we're putting the word out. Also, Cindy Lovett and her Rehoboth and Bloom team will be emptying the planters on Monday, October 18th. A big thank you to all the Rehoboth and Bloom volunteers that are helping out with that task. Also, the RBMS newsletter, we're really proud of. It's been very successful so far. It's in progress of going out for November and December. We are moving forward at this time with the Community Unity Dinner scheduled for Sunday, December 5th from 4:30 to 7:30 at the Rehoboth Convention Center. The Oldies Dance has been canceled. That was scheduled for November. Also, we're working on a project for Reeves Across America. Cindy Levitt is on board. She's taking care of that. We're really proud to have this event. Other than that, any questions? Well, thank you. Yes.
I have one question.
Commissioner Sharp?
Just curious, last time we talked, there was, I believe, if my memory serves me, there was some interest from Main Street regarding the preservation of the Dolly sign. Am I right about that?
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, if not today, when we might get some additional information on that.
It is in the process, and I'm working with Ed, and we will get that information to you.
Commissioner Sharp, I
is that
expect that
something
will
you're
be,
targeting for November or December, or do you know yet?
Commissioner Sharp, I expect the Dolly sign to be back on the agenda at our November workshop. And at that time, we'll address your questions about Main Street, and I think Commissioner Gossett had questions about the Historical Society. So stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Main Street? If not, thank you. We'll go to the liaison for the Cape Henlopen Senior Center, or the pending liaison to the Senior Center. Ed, Commissioner Czerniawski, have you talked with them at all yet?
I have. I guess I'm not yet officially the liaison, but I'll give a brief update. The only thing new there is they're now requiring proof of vaccination and mask wearing in their facilities for their members. So that's the only update I've got for them right now.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you to all the commissioner liaisons and the speakers. We appreciate it. With that, we're going to go to the next item of business, which is the permit of compliance and supplemental permit of compliance hearing. The requests are by Ronald Langford of the Sands Incorporated to modify the floor plan of an existing restaurant known as Kiwi's Cove and Tiki Hut, formerly known as the Atlantic Seafood, pursuant to the Municipal Code, Section 215.11, modifications of floor plan, and Section 270-19, use restrictions, patios. The restaurant and patio are located at 101 North Boardwalk area there. It looks like representing This entity is Carlton Savage is on. Are you there, Carlton?
Yes, this is Carlton Savage.
All righty,
Can you hear
thank you. We'll get to you at the appropriate time. Stand by. With that, we have Matthew Janis, Building and Licensing Supervisor here to give his report, and we'll enter into this. Remember, this includes a public hearing. And do you want to do that first?
May I do that first?
Yep. We're going to turn to the city solicitor.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a permit of compliance, and as you know, Commissioners, the permit of compliance, no restaurant can serve alcohol in the city without first being issued a permit of compliance. As the mayor said, this is a permit of compliance to revise a floor plan, and it does include a patio area. Some of the things you are required to consider today while you hear this application are found at section 215-5B of the city code. There it says a permit of compliance or supplemental permit of compliance shall not be issued to the applicant or to the Delaware Alcoholic Beverage Control Commissioner, except by the favorable vote of a majority of the members of the city commissioners. In reaching their decision, the commissioners shall consider the following factors, including but not limited to. First, whether the applicant has demonstrated that the establishment's primary purpose will be that of a restaurant or dinner theater as defined in this chapter. Second, whether the establishment meets all of the city's applicable zoning and licensing provisions. Third, whether the establishment would be a detriment to the peace, order, and quiet of the neighborhood and the city. Fourth, whether the establishment will have an adverse impact on the neighboring properties or on the city of Rehoboth Beach, considering the impact on traffic, parking, and noise. Fifth, whether the applicant had made any false representation or statements to the city's employees or the commissioners in order to induce or prevent action by the city, not only in regard to the pertinent pending application under this chapter, but also in regard to the issuance of a building permit or business license for the subject establishment. So those are considerations that must go into your decision-making process today. I also want to include on the record those items that you have in your packet, which are also embedded in the agenda. First, there's a notice of public hearing that was posted by the city secretary on September 23rd, 2021. Second, there's a notice of today's public hearing that was published in the Cape Gazette on September 28, 2021, the Coast Press on October 6, 2021, the Delaware State News on September 30, 2021. Next are the building inspector's report dated October 4, 2021, which Mr. Janis will give in just a moment. Next, there's an application for permit of compliance notarized on July 22nd, 2021, and received on July 29, 2021, and then revised on September 29, 2021. You have a sample menu for Kiwi's Tiki Hut. There's a permit of compliance area plan that's dated July 2021. There's a plan titled Renovation of Atlantic Boardwalk Grill into Kiwi's Cove Restaurant, dated May 12, 2021. Next, there's an Alcohol Beverage Control Commissioner liquor license number 13069. And then finally, there's mailing to the property owners or verification of mailing to the property owners within 200 feet regarding notification for this hearing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Glenn. With that, we'll go to Matthew Janis, Chief Building Inspector, for his report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon all. Before you today is application number 0721-02, an amended restaurant permit of compliance, substantial modification of floor plan to include dining patio and supplemental supplemental permit of compliance. Excuse me. This is an application for substantial modification of a floor plan, specifically relocation of the bar area located at Kiwi's Cove as part of the Atlantic Sands Hotel. Also to include the dining patio supplemental permit of compliance. Pursuant to section 215-3, the applicant is the Sands Incorporated, 20246 Coastal Highway, Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 19971. The name of the restaurant is Kiwi's Cove and Tiki Hut, formerly Atlantic Seafood Grill. The restaurant is located at 101 North Boardwalk in Rehoboth Beach. Pursuant to the plan submitted, the following is true. The property is located at 101 North Boardwalk. The property is owned by the Sands Incorporated, 20246 Coastal Highway in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. The area is a hotel with proposed permanent seated dining in a C1 Central Commercial Zoning District. Pursuant to section 270-13C3D, a restaurant serving alcoholic beverages is a permitted use. The restaurant areas are as follows: the service area, including kitchen facilities, storage, restrooms, employee stations, hallways, and utilities. Proposed is 2733 square feet, calculated as 2756 square feet. Dining area is 1789 square feet, calculated is 1954 square feet. Permanent seating dining is listed as 106. I have calculated 106. Bar area is listed at 498 square feet. I have calculated 498 square feet. Bar seats are 28. I've calculated 28. Restaurant gross floor area is 3,231 square feet. I have 3,889 square feet. I believe that's inclusive of some walls that possibly didn't make it into the calculation. So I could agree with the applicant at the 3231. Ratio of bar to permanent seated dining is 26%. I have it calculated as 31%. Pursuant to section 215-1 definitions, there is a proposed patio of 157 square feet with non-permanent seating to be removed seasonally and during inclement weather. I also believe, per the applicant, that table will act as a barrier so as not to allow any movement from where they place those tables. And those tables are going to be placed in an accordion-style doors that are fronting the restaurant. The site also has available a total of 0 parking spaces, not really relevant to this discussion. The designated areas for proposed food storage and preparation are shown and labeled on the attached plans. The distance to the nearest property lines of the nearest church, public park, and residential lot are as follows. All Saints Episcopal Church is approximately 1,600 feet by way of Baltimore Avenue to right on North First Street to east on Olive Avenue. Lake Gerard Park, approximately 1,700 feet by way of Baltimore Avenue to right on North First. Residential lot is approximately 200 feet, and that's zoned R2. The applicant has stated that the approximate percentage of revenue between the sale of alcohol and food is 35% alcohol and 65% food. Authorization for the city to investigate is attached. Written and dated declaration by the applicant is attached, and the fee of $1,000 has been paid. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go into any questions by the commissioners, and then we'll bring up the applicant's representative and have commissioners ask questions before we then go to the public hearing. Commissioners, any questions of Matt Janis? Commissioner Sharnowski.
There's a 5% differential in what they proposed in your calculation on the gross floor area. Does that have any impact?
I don't believe so. It might have been a calculation on the applicant's part, but I don't think it makes any kind of impact on this.
Okay. And Matt, in your own layman words, could you just kind of tell us what we're actually looking at, what's changing here?
So what's changing here would be first and foremost the name. I believe it's still listed as Atlantic Seafood Grill. So they're going to be doing some modifications to that, which will turn it into Kiwi's Cove. To kind of match the Kiwi's Tiki Hut that they did on the opposite side. They are relocating the bar from the current area, and they're creating basically a mock-up of the Tiki Hut on the interior of the formal Atlantic Seafood Grill. And then out front, there's a section that they own that they're going to be pushing tables out to during the weather that's permissible to have some seating out there. The seats will still be located within the restaurants, but the tables will be out on their section of lot that they own that abuts the boardwalk.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you. Any further questions of the building inspector? Commissioner Gossett.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Janis. Could you just remind me of the ratio of bar to permanent dining seating in the code? What is our percentage on that?
I believe it's 25%, sir.
Okay. And this exceeds that?
It does. I believe it does, yes.
Okay. And then is it, the second thing on that also is, I'm curious, I believe the code also calls for some type of, and our code and also the ABCC code calls for some type of barrier if we have an exterior patio. Is that provided for in the plan? It's so small I can hardly read it. I'm sorry, but you probably are much more familiar with it than I am.
Yes, sir, it is. I believe those tables are going to be acting as the barrier. So those tables are going to be set up in such a way that it does not allow anybody to move on either side of that, in quotations, construction, if you want to call it that. So no one will be permitted to go from those barriers. They'll still have to use the normal customary means of egress.
And, okay, thank you. But how do we address that, the bar ratio variance?
We can certainly limit the amount of bar stools that they are permitted to place around the bar. I do also see some opportunity to place some more tables throughout the restaurant to get that ratio down. It would be on the applicant to decide which way he would like to pursue that.
Thank you. Matt, I've got a question. The code indicates that outdoor dining patios have to be a maximum of 750 square feet per restaurant. This indicates that there is a outdoor patio of 750 square feet, and there's also a new outdoor patio of 160 feet, or as you calculate, 157 square feet. If you would just explain the discrepancy there of having more than 750 square feet.
Certainly. So there are two separate restaurants, according to the hotel, and located in the hotel. Our code doesn't explicitly speak to the number of restaurants that can be located in a hotel, only to the total space that's allowable for that restaurant, for those restaurants to exist. Then if you look into 27019B1, it states the gross area devoted to dining patio purposes shall be limited to 750 square feet per restaurant. So if we look at that and we include these as two separate restaurants, they would essentially be allowed to have two patios up to 750 square feet each.
Thank you, Matt. Any further questions from the commissioners of the Chief Building Inspector? If not, we'll call on Carlton Savage, the representative for this entity.
Hello, Carlton Savage with Scale Engineering, as well as representing the Atlantic Sands Hotel. Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for having us today. And thank you, Matt and Glenn, for the introduction. I agree with everything that was said. I do have some question related to the bar to dining area calculation, but we can discuss that further in. So the summary of what we were trying to do here is we created the Kiwi's Tiki Hut last year, and I believe it was a pretty good hit with guests to the hotel as well as day goers of the beach and boardwalk. So we would like to take that same theme, which is a nice outdoor airy theme, and put it inside on the inside of the building here. We've always struggled with the space for this interior restaurant that is the Atlantic Seafood Grill. And we think this theme and change up of the way the seated dining and bar arrangement with some outdoor seating, we think that will do extremely well given its location. So we've prepared this application. The main changes Matt alluded to were we had a bar that used to be kind of along the on the right side of that restaurant as you're looking at the plan, kind of backed up to the pool deck. That bar was a little dated looking at it, not as fun and nice to sit at. So we would like to take that bar, move it into the middle as more of an octagon, more friendly seating arrangement. We will be adding an ADA bathroom to the restaurant. Right now it's a fairly old floor plan, so we will add that for ADA compliance. And then the area where it used to be a bar, we would like to turn into a service area, which will allow some to-go meals, takeout, and also a service window to go to the outside of that building. The The third component there is the seated dining, or the patio dining. Right now, there's an overhang on our property that we actually put in a door a few years ago. This opened up the exterior. That did really well. We would like to do that again on the opposite doorway. And then, as Matt alluded to, we would do these on casters, sort of like 4 seats per section. These would roll out on nice days to allow people to enjoy the weather outside on a dining patio, but would act as a barrier from anybody entering or exiting the building. We would still use the existing doorways that are on both sides of those accordion style doors as our ingress and egress for the restaurant, bar space, and everything. We did separate the 2 restaurants. We probably should have done this last time. We looked at the Tiki Hut. Previously, if you guys remember, when it was just kind of an outdoor patio area, the kitchen was not nearly as nice as it is now. So it was always connected because it really didn't have a standalone kitchen. Once we did the improvements this past year, now we have a full kitchen, full hood system. They act as 2 standalone restaurants. We will be serving similar meals at both. That is why I've presented the menu will be the same. We may do a little different style interior once we see how things work, but the intent is to keep the style of food and the menu almost identical from interior and exterior. What we found out this year was we had quite a bit of waiting on the outside Tiki Hut. A lot of people, especially when it rained, were looking for places to go, to sit, have a sandwich, enjoy a cocktail, that kind of thing, and we'd like to provide that service for them. But the whole goal is to move that theme from outside to inside and run with something that we think is working pretty well. So I guess I'll go to the seated ratio of bar to seated dining. I calculated it 2 different ways. I had 26% by seat ratio, which I believe was the one. We had 106 seated dining spaces, 108, excuse me. And that calculation between the 16, I believe it's 16, let me double check my numbers here. Yeah, 16 proposed bar seats. I'm really count that to make sure. Oh, sorry, 28 proposed bar seats. Sorry. Yeah, 28 proposed bar seats against 108 seated dining. I believe it says 106. Does come out to be about 26, 27%. But then the code, if you look at the code, actually makes reference to the bar area. This is section 270-19A5. It actually mentions that the bar area should be no more than 25% of the square footage of the permanent seated dining area, but not to exceed a maximum of 500 square feet, with a minimum of 350 if you don't make that. So I don't know if I did it 2 different ways there. I calculated it by seat ratio and by square footage. By my square footage calculation, I have 21%. So we may be under what's already compliant there, but I'd like to see if we are versus, I believe Matt did his calculations based on the number of seats, I believe, not the square footage.
That is correct. And as I review my numbers here, I do come up with 26% as I redo the calculation here. So I'm in agreement with the applicant at this point.
But the maximum is 25%,
The
correct?
maximum would still be 25%. Yes, Mayor.
So we have a discrepancy here, although minor, needs to be adhered to, and it would be up to the commissioners whether to stop this permanent compliance investigation till it's corrected, or to go ahead and consider it with a condition that it become compliant at some point. Commissioners?
I'm in favor of continuing with a possible condition.
I am as well.
Commissioner Legree, don't forget you're muted.
Probably better that way. I'm in favor also.
All righty.
They-
Then if there's no more questions of the commissioners to the applicant's representative, then we'll go to the public hearing. This is a public hearing. I'm going to go down the pre-registered speakers list. And if you've got any comments pro or con, we would appreciate hearing from you. Although Commissioner Chernowski, I see your hands up. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor, I'd like to ask the applicant, Matt referenced 2 restaurants in the hotel. It appears to me as though they're consolidating from 2 separate restaurants to 1. Is that correct?
Hi, this is Carlton Savage again. Actually, we're doing the opposite. We have 1 consolidated restaurant as it currently is, even though they acted very separate from one another previously. The theme will be all the same now, but we will actually have 2 separate restaurants. We do comply. We're underneath of the maximum square footages to have in a hotel. We just have 2 separate restaurants. And the reason being is they were always connected actually through the laundry room by a corridor, which was very strange before, but that's how it was always done. After reviewing the code with Matt and taking a look at things, nothing we saw precluded anyone from doing 2 restaurants as long as you kept your maximum area underneath of the requirements. So to eliminate that confusion, we do have 2 separate kitchens, 2 separate dining areas. It's 2 separate things, very similar theme, but they are 2 separate things.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? If not, we'll open the public hearing. We're going to go down through our list of pre-registered speakers, can speak in favor or not. Carol Everhart, Rehoboth Beach, Dewey Beach Chamber of Commerce. Carol, you may be muted because I see you're online. We'll come back to Carol. Dan Slagle or Greer Manival of Rehoboth Beach Main Street.
No comment, Mayor.
Thank you, Dan. With that, we'll go to Walter Brittingham.
I'm here.
Any comments?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Rick Perry.
I have no comments on this.
Thank you, Rick. Carlton Savage and Jean Langford. That seems to be all our members of the public. Anybody else want to speak?
Frank Cooper.
And Tom Evans when you get a chance.
Who's that? Tom Evans?
Tom Evans.
You're not listed on this, but go ahead, Tom.
Well, you brought up something that I didn't think was going to be part of this. That's the unfortunate thing. From now on, I'm just going to say I need to speak on everything. And this comes up over and over, and I need Glenn to put his way back hat on again. He didn't disagree with me last time. Let's see if the code has actually changed. Going back as far as yesterday's restaurant in the Henlopen Hotel, it also came up at First Street Station. The code at that time read you couldn't have 2 restaurants in the same building. And when the Bellhaven came back and Grotto's was going to be on the boardwalk and it was revealed there was going to be a restaurant in their design of the Bellhaven /1, that came up and I don't know whatever happened with that. Glenn, has that code changed or am I remembering? I know that we gave a variance to yesterday's to operate because the Horizon Room was in the same building.
So Tom, my memory was kind of, I was scratching my head when this application came in as well, because I recall a time when there was a limitation upon the number of restaurants in a commercial building. I think even at that time, there was still an allowance for more than 1 restaurant in a hotel. But I've not been able to find anything in the current code that prohibits more than one restaurant in a commercial building. And Matt and I actually had this conversation. And I don't recall, Tom, when it fell out or how it fell out, but I don't see it there anymore.
I'm good with that. I just want to make sure because I keep bringing it up because no one can seem to find the date when that changed. But the absence of something should be shown somewhere in some place that it's gone away. But thank you.
Right. I share your recollection. I just think it's not there anymore.
Thank you, Tom. With that, there appear to be no other members of the public.
Frank Cooper wanted to speak.
Somebody needs to mute themselves, please. We're hearing your family in the background. Commissioner, well, with that, I need to close the public hearing.
That's right.
Mayor, I think Frank Cooper wanted to speak on the matter.
Frank, you're not signed up, but you're free to talk. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to speak in favor of awarding the certificate of compliance. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other members of the public? If not, we're closing the public hearing, and it's now in the hands of the commissioners to discuss it, debate it, and offer a motion if so inclined.
Commissioner Gossett, I certainly support the new restaurant and the greater opportunities for folks visiting on the boardwalk and what have you. But I have a concern, and I know it's only 1 or 2 or 3% here that we're talking about. So to go forward with this, as has been recommended and I would support, I would like to see a revised floor plan that meets our code of a 25% maximum of seated ratio there. And I know, Mr. Janis, you said there was a question of discussing with the owner lessening bar stools and increasing table space and what have you, but I think that that's perhaps the solution to this, but I don't want to see it landed in a, quote, gentleman's agreement. I would rather see it on a formalized floor plan that we would have reference to so that we don't have a similar occasion here of discussion of, do you remember? I don't remember. What happened? Did it fall out? This type of thing. So again, just a formal paper trail that protects both the applicant and the city that they are in compliance with the code when the permit of compliance was issued. Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Gossett, I think the easiest way to handle that is probably just to, if somebody wants to make a motion, whichever way to approve it, to condition that motion on updating drawings and calculations to bring into compliance with the zoning code. And I think at that point, it would be in the hands of building and license to assure that before, and the city manager also, before permit of compliance is issued finally.
And Matt, am I correct that if a reduction of 1 bar seat brings them into compliance with the 25% under either of the ways you could potentially calculate it?
That's correct. I would agree with that. I also see opportunity to remove potentially 4 bar stools from the areas of where you would be accessing behind the bar area. So there's opportunity to remove some bar stools on this proposal.
But the permit of compliance won't be finalized until an updated plan was presented to you, and you have to stamp it, I presume, for City Rehoboth Beach.
That is correct.
Yeah.
Any further comments by the commissioners?
Yeah, I do. So it sounds like we're using 2 different methods here. Are you counting seats, Matt, or are you counting square footage?
I'm counting seats. And then knowing that the bar is under 500 square feet.
Calculated and not square footage, because square footage was just referenced by the applicant when he read the code.
So the square footage doesn't come into question to me as the bar area is below 500 square feet. It's obviously, the restaurant is bigger than what would translate into that calculation. So I would go by the bar seats here versus the permanent seating, which would be the 26%. So removing a couple bar stools from the bar area would satisfy that requirement.
Thank you. Well, I disagree with Commissioner Gossett. I think, and agree with you, Mayor. I think we can approve this today with a condition, and there's no need to have a new floor plan put before us.
I was not suggesting a new floor plan put before us. I was saying that we need to have the building inspector have a compliant floor plan going forward with this, and that is how the motion would be made.
Agreed.
Well, then, if so inclined by the commissioners, I would entertain a motion to grant a restaurant permit of compliance and a dining patio supplemental permit of compliance with the conditions that we noted earlier.
Mayor, I'll make a motion if you just give me 1 second here to pull it up.
Restate your motion. Does it include the conditions that we mentioned earlier?
It would, yes.
There's a formal motion that we need to read.
I'm pulling that up, Mayor, right now.
Okay.
Just give me 1 moment.
We need to.
Unless someone else has it in front of them. Mayor, I find the following to be true, that the proper application for a restaurant permit of compliance and dining patio supplemental permit of compliance has been filed, the proper fee has been paid, the proper notifications have been made, that all parties wishing to be heard have been heard, that the primary purpose is that of a restaurant based on their application and menu submitted, the restaurant and dining patio meet the city's applicable zoning and licensing provisions, that the restaurant and dining patio would not be a deterrent to the peace, order, and quiet of the neighborhood and the city, that the restaurant and dining patio will not have any adverse impact on the neighboring properties or the city of Rehoboth Beach, considering the impact on traffic, parking, and noise, and that the applicant has made no false statements to the city employees or the commissioners. Therefore, I make a motion that the city manager issue the applicant a permit of compliance for the operation of a restaurant and a supplemental permit of compliance for the operation of a dining patio to be associated with the restaurant, with a condition that they submit a new floor plan to the building and licensing department so that the ratio of bar to permanent seating is at or under 25%.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Sharp to grant a motion or to issue a restaurant permit of compliance and issue a dining patio supplemental permit of compliance, subject to the condition that updated drawings and floor plans calculations to bring it into compliance with the zoning code are provided. Is there any further discussion among the commissioners? If not, we'll take a roll call vote. Commissioner Sharp?
Aye.
Commissioner Gay?
Aye.
Commissioner Tim Bennett?
Aye.
Commissioner Legree?
Aye.
Commissioner Chernowski?
Aye.
Commissioner Gossett?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. The motion is unanimous. And congratulations, Mr. Savage.
Thank you.
You don't need to hang around.
So much fun, though.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you. With that, we're going to go into the next item of business, which is a public hearing on the matter of amending Chapter 270 zoning, Section 270-4 gross floor area, to clarify which commercial areas are to be included and excluded in calculating gross floor area. Commissioners Gossett and Gay, you sponsored this, so I'm going to turn it over to you, please. Remembering at some point, this includes a public hearing, so.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess I'm going to turn it over to City Solicitor for a read through and any other comments you want to make, an introduction to it. I have a short PowerPoint after that, and I'm sure Commissioner Gossett will have a few things as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Gay. So this is an ordinance. I'll read it in title. This is an ordinance to amend Chapter 270 zoning of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 2001 by amending Section 270-4 relating to gross floor area. Commissioners, you've had this before you. This is an effort to revise the definition of gross floor area as it relates to commercial uses. I did have an opportunity to meet with Commissioners Gay and Gossett, and there's two items I wanted to put on the record before the public hearing is open, because they're matters that further clarify two small provisions, but I think they're relevant enough that they should be included in the ordinance. So if you go to line 168, 167 and 168, they're to be included within gross floor area in a commercial use are elevators, elevator equipment rooms, and elevator shafts. In the time that I had with the commissioners, Matt Janis was present, and we did ask him, would that be included at each level, or would it be included just at the grade level? He said his practice is to include the elevator shaft area at each level. So there, we'd like to add at 13, elevators, elevator equipment rooms, and elevator shafts, comma, on all levels at and above grade, to clarify that it's the ground level and that each one above. The other addition would be at line 172. This is section F, where it says gross floor area in commercial uses is deemed to exclude. In subsection 1, it says open areas.
Could you repeat that with the section?
Sure. This is line 172, section F. It says gross floor area in a commercial use is deemed to exclude. Subsection 1 says open areas such as, but not limited to, parking lots, loading zones, and driveways if uncovered. We'd like to add open areas not defined in subsection E. So not defined in subsection E would be added, such as, but not limited to, parking lots, loading zones, and driveways if uncovered. So this just clarifies that if there's an open area that's defined in subsection E, it's not to be excluded because it's specifically called out in subsection E. Those are the only two areas that we thought some additional clarification was needed. And that's all I have, unless there's questions for me.
Thank you, City Solicitor. Commissioner Gay?
I'm going to let Commissioner Gossett go first here, I think.
Just one question for you, Glenn, and Matt, if you can both address this. What we are proposing here, or this change, is codify in defining in practice. So do you think that this proposed amendment changes anything that is currently included and has been our current practice?
I can take that first. So I guess my view, Commissioner, is that this ordinance is different, certainly, than what was in. I'll explain. It's different than what is currently in the code, in that it calls specific things out, such as HVAC and different atrium areas, where we didn't have that specifically identified in the current version of the ordinance. And, being candid with the commissioners, I had a concern about it, whether it was Mr. Janis's current practice to include those things. So I did have an opportunity to meet with Commissioners Gay and Gossett and Mr. Janis, and we went through a number of these. We went through the ordinance line by line, and in each instance, Matt confirmed that this is the current practice of the Building and Licensing Office. One example of that is when we met with a applicant for a large commercial development recently. Matt had already done some plan analysis or plan review, and this ordinance was pending, and that became known to them, and they said, is that going to change our plan review? Matt said, no, I won't even do another plan review because this ordinance doesn't change the way I currently do commercial plan reviews. So that was kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, Commissioner. It's obviously a different ordinance, but it seems to be consistent with the way the Building and Licensing Department is currently reviewing commercial plans.
And thank you. And Mr. Janis, would you further comment on that? Is practice standard practice, or if you're the one that has real world practice in this application? So if you could just kind of comment on that, I would appreciate that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Through my research and through current department practices, This only clarifies and it doesn't change what the current practice is and what the current interpretations, and from what I can tell, the historical interpretations as well.
Thank you very much.
Yes, and go ahead.
City Solicitor, just very quickly, because your explanation was a little lengthy for me, but the answer to the question, does this change anything? It is a no.
I can't, well, listen, here's the way I see it, Commissioner, to be frank with you. I don't know how Terry Sullivan, a former building official, or Dave, and I'm forgetting his name now, but how they interpreted some of these. I think that the way that the current ordinance is structured, it allows for different building officials to possibly have some flexibility in their determinations. This ordinance doesn't provide the same level of flexibility, and I'm not saying flexibility is a good thing or a bad thing. I'm just saying that this ordinance seems to clarify that, or it seems to codify the way that the Building and Licensing Office is currently, stretching back to Mr. Molina, interpreting gross floor area. And that's all I can speak to, because I don't know what previous building officials, how they reviewed it.
Thank you.
Commissioner
Commissioner
Bennett?
Bennett has a question, and then I have two questions for the city solicitor.
Let's go,
before I do
Commissioner Bennett.
Yes, so this would also be for the city solicitor and for Mr. Janis. So does this amendment, does this change anything that a builder can do tomorrow versus what they could do yesterday?
I'll let, Matt, since you interpret it, I'll let you.
Because I feel like you two are saying, I feel like I'm getting two different answers here.
Thank you, Commissioner. No, this does not change what a person could have done yesterday versus what a contractor can do today. It's the same interpretation across the board.
And Mr. Mandelis, do you feel the same way?
Well, I don't get to interpret building plans. I mean, the building official interprets them. So my view is that this ordinance is, nothing will change. If this ordinance is adopted, nothing will change due to its adoption, that the current Building and Licensing Department isn't already reviewing it under those same standards.
Thank you.
And then, Mayor, I have a couple of clarifying questions also for the city solicitor before I do the presentation. And that is, first of all, we talk about the fact that there's changes in wording, but there are no changes in calculation, correct? This does not change the way anything is not only interpreted, but the way anything is calculated.
That's right.
Correct?
It doesn't change the amount of FAR, the amount of gross floor area. That's right. None of that changes. Correct.
And correct, Mr. Janis?
That is correct. Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. And then also just to sort of let people know, since this is a formal public hearing, just to confirm that the reason it's a public hearing is because any alteration in Chapter 270, the zoning code, even if it's only one word, is subject to a public hearing. Is that correct, City Solicitor?
That's right.
Okay, so that's why we're here today, or that's why it's a public hearing. So I'm going to do a brief presentation. I don't think this is more than 10 minutes. Clicking on here. Coming up. Oh, hold on a minute. Let me just go to slideshow. I don't know why it's not. I don't know why the side is still up there, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, we have one goal today, and that is to clarify the way gross floor area is defined for commercial uses. That is the only reason we're here and the only subject to this public hearing. Why are we here? Well, it started with Board of Adjustment cases within the last 2 years that showed there was ambiguity in the code. And we actually have done other clarifications based on Board of Adjustment decisions in our code before. This is not a new process. The most recent example that I can think of was a clarification a few years ago on the one building, one lot, which of course was very helpful to the city in the recent court case with Baymart that we were successful in. So clarifying code protects the city. And I can't say it any better in terms of the real reason we're here today. I can't say it any better than a note that was in the minutes from February of 2020 that says that this should be done in the interest of not having litigation expense. And this is when we started working on clarifying both residential and commercial code. However, you'll notice from that date that that was a month before the pandemic began. So that's been part of the reason for the delay. And when we started back at it last fall, we concentrated then on residential gross floor area and clarified that first. And you'll see the wording in the ordinance. Just preceding commercial is all of the residential listings that we adopted actually this past March. And that included excluded elements of gross floor area. So we're doing the same thing now with commercial. We need to finish what we started. The plan from the beginning was to clarify both. So that's why we're here at what I hope will be the end point of this process. So what are we doing today? Specifically, we're amending the definitions section. So that's only 270-4 for commercial use to specify which elements are included and excluded from gross floor area. And you have them underlined in your code. I mean, the city solicitor didn't read every line. He only read the corrections, but they're all underlined in the code. And I want to just stop here to make a point that actually came to me as I was reading the letters that are attached on the agenda today. A couple of people mentioned, included the word patchwork in their email, and as though what we were doing was somehow going to be a patchwork. And I thought that was a curious word because what we have in the code now is a patchwork. I can tell you how. Right now, gross floor area is just a sort of a narrative description of a few lines. But for commercial, in order to know what's included, you have to then go down to the section in definitions on structures. There's a whole paragraph there that lists all the structures. Then you have to go over to 270-21B5 to see how that affects the floor area ratio. So right now, we've got quite a patchwork of regulations, and what we're doing today is fixing that and listing them all in one place. Because the code has created a sort of a gridlock with developers coming in, and this part of the code is constantly being challenged, even for cases that don't go to the Board of Adjustment or don't go to court, let's hope, but still it gets challenged every day and it's very time consuming. So we are, as I said, using the same listing format for commercial that we did for residential. And the way we started using that last fall when we were looking at it initially is that it's a more modern format that's being used nationwide now, because I think many jurisdictions have realized that you can't, if you have just a narrative, it doesn't cover everything. So this has become a best practice to be very specific in listing elements that are included and excluded. And in addition, we are confirming current and past practice of the Building and Licensing Department to assure that there is equity with all applications. And in addition to Mr. Janice and Mr. Molina, who I have personally met with and talked to about this, I have also reviewed some previous applications to confirm this understanding. This does not alter what is allowed in the code at all, and it gives developers better information so that they can get on with their plans. Just a brief history of the cases that brought us here. There were 4 of them total at the Board of Adjustment, starting in August 2019 and finishing last September. It was 2 applications, but each one appealed, so it was a total of 4 cases. And in all 4 cases, the Board of Adjustment affirmed the building inspector's decision of what was in gross floor area for those applications. They also both appealed to Superior Court. And then just 2 months ago, the Superior Court also upheld the Board of Adjustment decisions and the building inspector's decisions. So I think that tells us we're on firm ground with the interpretation that the building inspector's interpretation is correct. The Superior Court decision really demonstrates the need for code clarification because it says that GFA's application to commercial properties has always been the same. That is the finding that they made, that we have always calculated it this way. They also determined that the code is reasonably susceptible to one interpretation. In the case of the cases before them, the inclusion of decks, porches, balconies, and staircases. So what we're doing today is taking it from this reasonable interpretation to a specific code provision, because the judge at Superior Court or the members of our Board of Adjustment are not sitting in building and licensing every day to go through this interpretation. So we need for it to be specifically stated in our code, so that we can avoid disputes over interpretation. And I'll go back now to some things that were stated at previous discussions we had in the last couple of months. One question that came up was, is this code clarification consistent with our CDP? So I went back and looked at that, and absolutely. In fact, our CDP mandates that we maintain up-to-date, uniform, and equitable set of development codes. And it also mandates that all these development standards will be clearly written, current, consistent, and widely available. But I'm going to try to scroll up here a little bit. But also in the last couple of months, there's been a little bit of misinformation conveyed. And it surprises me because we had consensus going back, more than a year on the fact that we would be doing these ordinances and that they would be clarifying only, that we would not be making any changes. But it's come out that somehow this ordinance might provide a disincentive or prohibit balconies on hotels. And that is simply not true, because as has been stated here multiple times today, the ordinance merely states how our building and licensing department interprets the code. So hotels built in years past have had balconies. Those built in the future can have balconies. And in fact, I have a few photographs here just to show the range of what has been done and what can be done. This is obviously a historical building. You'll recognize this as the Royal Treat today, but when it was the Hotel Royalton, it didn't have balconies the way we know them today. It had a sort of a front porch, very similar to house front porches, and it had all those awnings. So it's a very different look. Then the original Bellhaven had also kind of a porch look. It had outside space outside the rooms, but it was arranged in more of a porch pattern on their 2 floors. But in the 21st century, the newest hotels built in town include the Hotel Rehoboth, which does not have a balcony on every room, but it has a good many of them, and they're not all pictured here. There's different types. They have some walled and some, as you see in the photograph. And then the most recent one was the renovation of the Avenue Inn, the western part of that. And in a way, when I see this picture, I think it reminds me of the original Bellhaven in the sense that you have this kind of continuous porch, but in fact, those are room balconies as well. And what that shows is that our code has allowed quite a variety of balcony styles, and the code still allows that variety of balcony styles. The other piece of misinformation is interesting, and it also allowed me to learn some more from Mr. Janis and to also to provide education for the people listening today. And that is, at the last meeting, a commissioner read the definition of gross floor area from the International Building Code and said that our code definition was inconsistent with that. But here's the thing. Zoning codes and building codes are entirely separate. Zoning codes are local laws that regulate the use of land, and they're unique to each community. In fact, I like to say that zoning codes are like snowflakes. No two are alike. Whereas building codes are national and international standards that deal with safety and technical issues, such as fire safety and structural loads. But in Rehoboth Beach, we have both. We've adopted portions of the International Building Code, but we have our own zoning code. And the way Mr. Janis puts it is, the building code says how it's built, not what you can build. That's what the zoning code's for. So the bottom line of where we are today is no changes to zoning code calculations, as I confirmed with the city solicitor just before I started, in calculating gross floor area or in calculating floor area ratio. That we're maintaining long-established practices. We're removing ambiguity, as noted in the Superior Court decision. And that these clarifications will save taxpayer money and staff resources. As it is right now, and I've learned this from all of our communications with our building and licensing department, and let me tell you, they do a fantastic job. I don't know how they get everything done, especially with some of the complications they have. And that's why I'm proud to be giving them the tools they need today to solve some of their issues. The staff spends a great deal of time explaining and settling disputes over the patchwork that exists in our code with regard to gross floor area. This fix is a far better use of their time, and it's also a better use of developers' time and taxpayer money. It's no change, but it definitely, it's a big difference in our litigation exposure and, as I say, in staff time. And it will help every process going forward. So whether there's a code change in the future or whatever comes out of the CDP, whatever we do in the future, this can only help that process. So I'm going to stop there. I have one more thing I may talk about later, but I don't want to go beyond the scope of this clarification ordinance. So I'm going to stop there, and I assume you want me to then also stop share, Mayor?
Yeah, stop sharing screen so we can see your faces.
Okay.
And are there any commissioner comments at this point before we open the public hearing? Hearing none, then we'll open the public.
I'm sorry, I was muted. I got off there. I just want to kind of relay here that Commissioner Gay has done a lot of work on this and working with building and licensing. And again, this amendment is designed to clarify. As stated, there are recent cases before the Georgia Board of Adjustments and the Planning Commission and the courts that have shown there is ambiguity and confusion of just what is included in the gross floor area. And I think we've also seen a mini example today just with our permanent compliance hearing about how it is and how things are in the code are interpreted. So again, this amendment is designed to clarify. As was stated earlier, that if you can build something yesterday, after this amendment is passed, you can build the same thing tomorrow. And this clarification is exactly what we're proposing on that, is that for clarification. As we did back in March of this year, by unanimous vote, did this for residential clarifications. So, and again, just to restate what Commissioner Gay had pointed out, that we're fixing what a patchwork is now. As the code is written currently, you've got to go through multiple steps to figure it out. Step one, you must read the definition of gross floor area in 270-4 in definitions. Then that takes you to reading the definition of a structure, which again is in 270-4 under definitions. Then you have to go to a third step to look at 270-21B5, A, B, and C to determine the FAR calculation. So again, this clarifies taking those steps out. So it's all in one place. So that's the patchwork we currently have, but making this change that we hopefully will pass today is fixing that patchwork. It's all in one place. And we're not changing any definitions or creating things, but just making it simpler again for the applicant to understand what is required of them going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. With that, if there's no other comments from the commissioners, then we'll go to Commissioner Sharnowski. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mayor, thank you. I'd like to just make a few comments before we go to the public hearing. As I have in the past, I do have some concerns, and I completely agree with, Commissioner Gay. The whole point of this is to clarify and to make the code less ambiguous, and we all want that. Our biggest legal expense in the city, it tends to stem from this code. And I do think there are some unintended consequences. And I'll start with, we're changing the code and making some clarifying, some what we call clarifying it, without really thinking about aesthetics and what we're either incentivizing or disincentivizing what can be built. And I look at the purpose of the gross floor area is to limit the bulk of commercial buildings. When you look at the definition of bulk, it is the building volume. The building bulk or building volume means the total amount of three-dimensional space. We all know that three-dimensional space is what it is. So my concern here really is porches, balconies, decks, patios that are uncovered. We heard from, I spoke with Alex Moore, who was probably the last property that was built, the Avenue Inn, which he confirmed. What was done at that time was if it's not covered, it doesn't count. I spent a long time on the phone today with former Mayor Sam Cooper, reiterated that same thought, that if it's not covered, it doesn't count, including interior balconies, or I'm sorry, interior courtyards. So, you know, it's hard for us to say what, if this is changing anything or not, because the last commercial property was quite a long time ago, and Mr. Janus was not the building or even employed with the city at that time. I do have some concerns. I think there will be some unintended consequences. You know, and just, we're talking about inconsistency. We're now including elevator shafts. And I have an email here from Matt to an architect that specifically says elevator shafts are the only shaft that doesn't count. All others must be included, be it mechanical, fire, or whatever else. So there's an inconsistency right there. So those are my concerns. I wish we were doing more to incentivize things that make buildings look prettier and more appealing. And I just don't think this code does it. And again, I'm really referencing two things: the uncovered porches, balconies, decks, patios, and elevator shafts, which I've confirmed with several people, it has not been counted in the past. And by the email I just read, it was admitted by the building chief building inspector himself. That's all I have at this time, Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments from the commissioners? If not, we're opening the public hearing.
I guess I have a question, which is that, and I don't know whether Mr. Janus remembers or wants to speak to that message, but so what you're proposing, Mr. Schnaffi, is to change the code today. Is that what you're proposing?
I don't want to change the code. I just don't want to include things that I don't believe were included in the past. And that's basically anything that's uncovered. We can agree that stacked balconies are covered and that counts. But patios, porches, decks, I don't believe have been counted in the past, and I don't think they should be counted here. They do not add to the bulk of a building. And that is the whole purpose of gross floor area. And you know, we talk a lot about the charm and character of Rehoboth and preserving that. We all received an email from Alex Moore today, and he gave us a prime example of what a box looks like and a house with some balconies and other things. And I think that's very telling. And again, I don't know why we're treating residential buildings differently than commercial when we want the town to look, in my view, similarly aesthetically pleasing.
Let me just comment on a couple of things there. First, yes, I received the email from Alex Moore as well with the photograph. Photographs are two houses that are next door to each other. They were built at a similar time. They were both built under the same code. It was a matter of personal choice that one had balconies and the other didn't. They were built under the exact same code. So I don't know why one built. I agree, the one with the balcony looks better, but it was the same code. But basically, Mr. How many commercial proposals would you say we've seen in the last few years? A dozen or more?
As far as new construction or just retrofits or
So
similar?
anything where you would have been counting gross floor area.
Maybe a dozen.
Okay, and in all of those, you have counted the elements that are in our list here as clarifying today.
That is correct. Yes, Commissioner.
So if what Commissioner Shanowski says, say we were to say, okay, well, we're going to change this, it would be a change, and those people would not have benefited from that change, correct?
I believe that is correct. Yes.
Okay, I just want to clarify before we go on, but thanks.
Commissioner Bennett, and then I'd like to go to public comment. Commissioner Bennett and then Commissioner Gossett.
Yes, Commissioner Sharnowski, so you said the Avenue Inn, you had said that they had said that it was not counted. Were their balconies not counted? Is that what?
Sure, if we can answer that. My understanding is because the balconies are stacked, they were counted.
They were.
The front patio and anything else uncovered and the elevator shaft was not counted based on what their architect said.
Okay, is that true? Is that, I mean, can we confirm that with the building inspector or with Mr. Mandelis?
I don't have any personal knowledge of it. And Matt, I don't think you were.
No, I wasn't employed at that time.
Thank you.
If I also can comment on this, I think Commissioner Sharnowski, you speak of incentives and aesthetics and what have you, and I believe that we actually just recently created one huge incentive for properties, and that is removing underground parking from gross floor area. So that certainly is an incentive, and I would certainly support more incentives that we could design with regards to flexibility in FAR for a give and take. But again, this is what is in this clarification of this amendment is a formalization of what is being interpreted currently so that it is not going to change when building inspectors change or individuals like that. The code stands as it is written, not as interpreted by a building inspector. That's the reason to list all of these specifics and bring them forward so that, again, the applicant and the building inspector or individual that's reviewing the plans understands exactly what is allowed and what is not allowed. So it's a clarification, again, going forward so that we can keep consistency in the code for the future, not that it is differently interpreted by a different building inspector. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Mayor, if I could just make one last comment, because I think it's relevant, and I'm not trying to be difficult. I just truly do not want there to be unintended consequences from this, and I think it's very important. And I agree, we don't want things to be interpreted differently. We don't want ambiguity. So I gave one example at the last meeting where there was a patio, what I call a patio in between two buildings. And when I think Commissioner Gay and Gossett and City Solicitor met with Matt, he said, oh, well, I interpret that as a walkway or something to that effect. I think it's a bricked area in between two buildings. I would consider that a patio, and I would think that other future building inspectors may consider it the same. So there's some ambiguity there in my mind. Again, but I'm done. Thank you.
Well, walkways that are covered are the only ones that are included.
Yeah, this was an uncovered area.
Let's go to the public. They've been very patient. We're opening the public hearing for those that pre-registered to speak. We'll start with Walter Brittingham.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you. Rick Perry.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I would like to comment on this, and as you know, I have commented on this proposal before. But before I get into the comments, I have two questions. One, are the versions of the proposed amendment to 270-4, including what City Solicitor Mandelis indicated at the beginning of this this topic, are they in the agenda packet?
No. No, they're not, Rick.
Why not?
Because the agenda packet includes what the commissioners voted to go to a public hearing on. So that's all that could be included in the agenda packet. These are proposals that are, those two additional things I mentioned at the beginning are proposals to amend this ordinance. I don't think they're significant that would require that such that a new public hearing would be required. And I'm happy to repeat them if you'd like me to. But to be clear, they are not what's in the agenda packet, and they are suggestions that are being brought forward with this public hearing.
Well, I think that's unfortunate. Secondly, Commissioner Gay, it would have been nice if your presentation was also part of the agenda packet. It's a little difficult, particularly with virtual meetings, to follow that as a member of the public and be able to digest it all as you so quickly ran through it.
It will be available.
Well, but the public hearing is now, so being available in the future doesn't help much. Basically, what I'm seeing is a lot of rewriting of history here, and sort of bootstrapping to justify what you're doing. And I do not believe, and I think it is disingenuous for anyone to suggest that what you are putting forth is a clarification. It is clearly not. There is empirical evidence that it is not consistent with past practice. And that is even recently, during the period of time when Mr. Janus was in the Building and Licensing Department. And so to say that you can do today, or what you could do yesterday, you can do today. Well, that's not true. You're dramatically changing what is included in gross floor area. And I will admit that there is architectural building definitions, and there are zoning codes, building codes and zoning codes. The zoning code is intended to ensure that a structure does not exceed the bulk limitations for the property as it's classified. The building code, however, and as indicated by Commissioner Shanowski, and I have myself mentioned this before in the past, the International Building Code was adopted by the city. And from the standpoint of calculating what constitutes gross floor area within the structure, you are seeking to apply the same definition of gross floor area for two different purposes. And I admit that our code is a patchwork. And I don't think you're making it better. I think you're making it worse. If you were going to deal with 270-4, why didn't you deal with the ridiculous 12-foot height ceiling issue? Commissioner Gay, you were on the Planning Commission at the same time that I was, and we all indicated that that was an absurd provision. And you were among those who criticized it. And so talk about patchwork coding. This is a prime example of doing just that. And it fixes nothing. What it does do is that it impairs the ability of developers to develop architecturally significant structures in this city that are architecturally pleasing and the type of structure that is reminiscent of what we had in the past. Now, you also say that balconies, you could have balconies in the past and you can have balconies in the future. That's a simple statement. That's probably true. What you end up with is a smaller structure or the requirement that parties have to go for variances. And what we should not be doing is encouraging people to go to the Board of Adjustment for variances all the time and end up with a hodgepodge of different structures in the city. You know, that's not the way that a city should be developed. And I just don't understand why the city ignores the International Building Code, which it adopted. And your definition is in clear, diametrically opposed language to the International Building Code. And when you adopted the International Building Code, there was only one exception to the building code that the city agreed to, and that was with respect to residential sprinklers. You adopted the International Building Code in its entirety, except for that. And I think it's about time that people realize that you are hurting this city and damaging its future. And the motivation here is clear. It is also getting in front of the CDP.
Rick, you want to bring it to a close?
I'm going to end there. But, I would strongly encourage you to not act on this today. I don't think it's ready.
Thank you, Rick. Frank Cooper?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I'd like to respond to Mr. Perry. First off, that I am rather experienced with GFA calculations, and there is no one GFA calculation. There are GFA calculations for specific purposes. This county uses one for taxation, for instance. HVAC contractors use a GFA calculation for that. So to say that the International Building Code or the Residential Building Code is either one, that their specific calculation of floor area is the only one and is disingenuous. That's just not the case. And the fact is that the zoning is clearly different from building, and you have every right and every good purpose to calculate GFA for the purposes of protecting this city's aesthetics and for bulk. So that is that. And I also read a lot of letters here that I have from mayor and commissioners about a code overhaul versus this clarification. And the proposed amendment and the future total overhaul of the building code are just not mutually exclusive items. We can do both of those. We can do this now, and we can do the overhaul maybe and probably is needed in the future. But the letters demanding the overhaul instead of the proposed amendment are just serving as stall tactics, which would allow for additional challenges to the code prior to rewriting it all. So I think this actually makes it more important to pass this amendment today, because it shows what they're really trying to do here. So that's all my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Stephen Kaufman, are you on?
I'm unmuted now.
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. First, I want to welcome all the new commissioners. I need to make a disclaimer first. I have several comments, but I want to make a disclaimer first because I'm a member of the Planning Commission. I want it to be on the record that these are my comments only, and they do not reflect any decision by the Planning Commission or any of its other members. I think it's important for me to do that, so I'm speaking not as a Planning Commission member, but as an individual. Although I have many, many years of experience as a land use attorney dealing with these matters. I do think this will have significant change to the current practices. And I agree with Commissioner Chernowski that a lot of aesthetics and good architectural will be compromised if you approve this today. I strongly suggest that it's premature and that you not adopt this today for several reasons. The first is one you've been discussing yourselves. The current code interpretation does enforce it as you've suggested here. And it has, in fact, been upheld in court proceedings before the Superior Court. So there's no need to rush to do this. Secondly, the CDP is coming and it will be adopted given its current timeline in the summer of 22. And having seen the draft and so on, it's very likely that you'll be given proposals for a new mixed-use commercial zone, which will have architectural standards and designs in it, which will very probably resolve this issue with ratio of floor area. I believe that the adoption of this now will have a very chilling effect on the commercial development industry in general. And it may very well affect your efforts on the redo of Wilmington and Baltimore Avenues. I don't know of any other jurisdiction, and I've practiced in many, which have a definition of floor area ratio that includes these things, which are primarily amenities: patios, decks, pools, things of that nature, which are uncovered, as Commissioner Chernowski indicated. I don't know of any other jurisdiction that has that kind of definition for floor area ratio. I also feel that all current applications before the Planning Commission could not meet this new code definition without drastically reducing the size of their buildings, which in turn I think will have a big impact on the economic incentives that they have to redevelop.
Steve,
if you have
Steve, 1 minute, please. Thank you.
Okay. So what I'm saying is, I think it's premature. I really strongly urge you to defer this until you have some clarification and a chance to review what will certainly be before you pretty soon, the proposed comprehensive development plan. And at the very least, if you do adopt now, I strongly suggest that you remove things like patios, decks, pools, HVA systems, and hopefully porches and uncovered porches for hotels and things like condominiums. These are amenities that are very strongly oriented not only to the occupants of the buildings, but also to the community in general. And they have a big impact on architectural aesthetics and design. So I really strongly urge you to defer this for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Tom Evans.
I'll try to keep it short and sweet. I agree completely with Frank Cooper, and I like his comments immensely. I'd also like to say that I give a lot of lectures. That's what I do for a living. Susan Gay's presentation could have been understood by my undergraduate students seeing it for the first time. So I don't know what show you were looking at, whoever disagreed that couldn't understand it. I'm also strongly in favor of this body moving forward today with the amendments to the gross floor area, as it's only a first step. I'm not saying it's patchwork. This is fixing a strategic and very important portion that has caused I know you only referenced Board of Adjustment for 2 years, but it has haunted me for 15 or 20. And that needs to move forward now. And then a overhaul of everything at some point that integrates everything would be wonderful. I thank you all for your service.
Thank you, Tom. Jan Conacy. I don't see her signed up here. We'll go to Julie Davis. And I don't, yeah, I see Julie there. You there?
No,
You're there.
Go ahead, Julie.
Yes, I'm. Good afternoon, Mayor Mills and Commissioners. Before I start, I also have the same disclaimer that Commissioner Kaufman made with respect to his role in the Planning Commission. Nothing I am about to say reflects any discussion, much less decisions of the Planning Commission. And so I am here purely in an individual capacity this afternoon. But I am here to speak in support of the proposed amendment. Opponents of the amendment would have you believe that if adopted, the amendment would stifle the city's business community, discourage any and all commercial development that features architectural creativity, drive businesses to Route 1, cause vacant storefronts on the city's commercial streets, and result in higher taxes and increased utility fees. Wow, all those dire consequences as a result of an amendment to the zoning code that wouldn't change the status quo, but instead would simply codify in explicit language the interpretation of city building inspectors concerning which structural elements are included and which are excluded from commercial GFA. You don't have to take the words of Commissioner Gay and Gossett that this amendment creates no new limitations on commercial development. As Commissioner Gay pointed out, you can read the opinion of the Delaware Superior Court in the Lingo and Lansford cases that she referred to. In those cases, the issues were whether an outdoor staircase and exterior balconies, respectively, should have been included in the GFA of the buildings in question. The Superior Court, after considering all the facts and circumstances, found that the city's application of the zoning code's GFA provisions to commercial properties has always been the same. That's a direct quote. And that including the outside staircase and the balconies in GFA was a reasonable interpretation of the zoning code in light of that history. Also, I think it's important to understand that failure to adopt this clarification concerning what structural elements are included in GFA for commercial development, failure to adopt this clarification could create a further ambiguity in the code under what's known in the law as a negative inference. Simply put, this could be a failure to amend the GFA definition for commercial following amendment of the GFA definition for residential. Could be interpreted as an intent on the part of the mayor and commissioners not to include some or all of the same structural elements in commercial GFA, even though they have been included by the city's building inspectors over the years. Finally, as Commissioner Gossett has explained, and others also, that this would not be a patchwork change to the existing code. Like most opponents of the GFA amendment, I would strongly support a comprehensive review of the code, but it could be years before a complete zoning code review and rewrite could be accomplished. Meanwhile, the current ambiguities would have led to 2 lawsuits against the city, and they would persist. Unintended consequences can be a problem in any legislative action that the mayor and commissioners could take. Unintended consequences go with any action that you take in your individual life, but they can be addressed, they can be fixed at the appropriate time. Don't not adopt this amendment because of concerns of unintended consequences, by definition, none of which have been identified. Adoption of the amendment now, I think, is a sensible and desirable first step with respect to any future rewrite of the current code, and should be adopted now while it's on the table and everybody understands exactly what's at stake. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie. Kendi Lovett. If you're talking, you're muted, Cindy.
Okay, there. Hello?
Hello, Cindy.
Are you there?
Go ahead.
Hi. I'm going to be very quick. I want to thank all of you first, Mayor and Commissioners, for
Speak.
all of your
You
volunteer
need to
work on
speak
behalf
up.
of all of us.
Speak up.
Okay, I want to thank all of you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, for your volunteer work on behalf of all of us. And I don't claim to be aware enough of this code to directly comment. However, I'd love to encourage our mayor and commissioners to consider any code which would incentivize, not discourage, beautification and architectural enhancements of commercial properties in downtown Rehoboth, both new and current. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. With that, is there any other member of the public that wants to speak that hadn't spoken? Hearing none, I'll close the public portion of this, public hearing portion of this meeting and leave it up to the commissioners to debate. I thought we've had some good discourse. I guess what saddens me a little bit is the division between those that want something like this and those that think it's detrimental to the commercial industry. I'm a little on the fence, frankly. But I would sure, we do not have to vote just because we're having a public hearing today. We can defer that. And I think that's my preference, to get Tom West, our city planner, to weigh in on this, because I think that he can help bridge the divide. Any commissioners have comments?
I'll let others.
Commissioner
I'll let
Gay,
others-
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to make the observation that, Mayor, as you were talking about delaying it, I was thinking, well, what would be different between what we've discussed today and what would happen at a later date? And I think you've already answered the question, which is to have our city planner weigh in. Could you elaborate a little bit more on exactly what the expectation would be?
Well, my expectation is that I believe Tom's listening to this, or of course he can go back and listen to the recording and outline the questions that came from the commercial interests as well as the others, and be able to help better articulate what's good and what's not good. I'd also like to see him give any recommendations to favor incentives and give a little more flexibility, or look at architectural review planning so that we indeed don't cut off our nose.
I think all of that I could absolutely support. What troubles me is, to me, the way I think, you can't have it both ways when you say, if you could build it yesterday, you can build it tomorrow. So that's either, to me, that's either yes, you can, or no, you can't. So if our city planner could help us have a more easily understood or validated approach to this, that might be helpful, because I'm looking for a very strong assessment of whether or not that statement is true. That's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Bennett.
I totally agree with Commissioner Sharp, because I think the members of the public made compelling arguments on both sides, and I'm still not clear, like you, Mayor, a little uncomfortable which way to go, because I'm not sure we have a definitive answer that what you could do yesterday, you could do tomorrow. So I would be in favor of getting more clarification.
Commissioner Gossett, go ahead.
Just, I mean, I understand your comments, and Tom West has been listening, and I would ask him to make any comments that he could right now, and then I should have some other follow-up comments. Mr. West?
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Tom, we're putting you on the spot, and I'm not sure that that's appropriate, so you have to decide whether you want to comment or not at this point. I'm for giving you more time.
Well, yeah, I think I'm relatively new to Rehoboth. I'm not new to things like floor to area ratio and the way communities use these tools. I think that what I could provide perhaps is there was some mention that what other communities use or don't use. I could provide some context with that. And I could provide, I think you're all well aware of how floor to area ratio is used. My experience is that in Southern Delaware, it's not really used that much. What they do use is lot coverage and building coverage. So that I don't know that we're going to find anything in the immediate vicinity to compare it to. For instance, Sussex County in their commercial zones use lot coverage and building coverage. So it's one dimensional. You have to factor in the building height to figure out what's the mass that you would get, and how to compare that to floor to area ratio might be somewhat different. But I'd be glad to look at more information and give you, if there's additional questions, I think that would be helpful too, to provide any context to help with your decision. It's really, floor to area ratio is just a measurement. I know there was discussion about what's the impacts on aesthetics. It's a measurement of bulk and mass. So it is a measurement of aesthetics, and I think it's one that was adopted since your last community development plan. So that's what it was put in place for. What it's going to come down to is the right ratio. Is it right in all places? Is it right in certain areas of the city, or is there ways to use it as an incentive to build from? So those are my initial comments listening to the discussions. I'd be glad to look at it a little bit more just with my experience and look at other communities and perhaps examples that I can dig up and bring back to the board so it can look, use it for this decision.
Thank you, Tom.
Mayor, can I go?
So, Commissioner Gay, yes, ma'am.
Yes. I hear a lot of really great ideas here, and I spoke to Mr. West last week, and it was a great conversation. And I tell you, I'm chomping at the bit to move on to next steps. There's no question about it. But my feeling is, in terms of my own opinion, we were here to clarify. That was my only role in this. I think somebody mentioned something about justifying our opinion. I don't have an opinion about this. I want to see changes in the future. But I also need to look at where we are today. And I'm looking at finishing what we started, a process we started 2 years ago and half finished when we did the residential code. And frankly, I thought Julie Davis raised an excellent point. It's one I thought of myself, but not being a lawyer, I wasn't sure. And she just confirmed what I thought, which is by having residential in there in the definitions and not having commercial, we've created a huge new ambiguity, huge. So my feeling is to, sort of tie this up with a bow and provide clarity, equity. That's the most important thing, equity. I've heard Mr. Janis say that this is the way he's been interpreting the codes. And there's been a dozen projects he's interpreted this, and he's got many in the works right now. We want to reduce our legal exposure. We want to uphold what the courts have found and make it crystal clear. But since we've gone off, I do have one other thing to share here. Let me see if I can do this. It's just one thing, but I didn't make it part of the presentation because it's really it's a different subject. But since we went that way, I want to talk about it because to me, it's very important to dispel some myths. I have learned so much in the last 2 years working on this. And the myth to dispel is that we provide disincentives, or that our code is rigid, or that it doesn't it doesn't invite commercial development. We do, and you know, when Mr. Kaufman spoke about how gross floor area is not in other codes, as many elements as we have in our gross floor area is not in most codes. He's right. I haven't seen it in most codes I've read either. But here's a list of what we don't do that everyone else, that most other communities do. Front setbacks, rear setbacks, side setbacks. We have a small setback if it's adjacent to residential, but otherwise nothing. And this is commercial districts. No requirement for open space. No bulk or density regulations in environmentally sensitive areas. And many people have special regulations just for development on the coastline, in our case on boardwalk. No requirements for architectural features. And maybe it would be great in the future if we did, but we don't have that now. For non-residential and non-hotel uses in commercial, they can use 100% of the lot. We have the highest height limit of any Delaware coastal town, and we have very low parking requirements compared to other Delaware coastal towns. So what that says to me is we offer maximum flexibility. So it's not architecturally, if the architecture is compromised, it's due to a lack of creativity, because we give the developer the entire space. We count everything in that space, but we basically give them the entire space. And I talked to Mr. West about this the other day and basically confirmed with him that the plan, and it's true, the plans we're seeing, Mr. Kaufman's right, they don't meet code. They're all over code. That's just the nature of the beast right now, it seems. They couldn't be built in the other municipalities here either. And they couldn't, or some of them couldn't be built in Sussex County as currently defined. So it would be wonderful to have a whole code rewrite that took care of all the elements that we're talking about today. And I look forward to that day. But in the meantime, we've got a glaring hole of ambiguity and an issue to settle. But we can take, my feeling is, we can take comfort in the fact that our code is not bad. It's very, very generous. And we have plenty of room to work within it. Mr. Janis and I talked about this morning. It's as creative as you want it to be. We talked about that. He used to work within it before he came here on the residential side. It's as creative as you want it to be. That's all.
Well, I've made my suggestion that, this has been in the works for many, many months. Appreciative of Commissioners Gay and Gossett for doing it. But again, I would like for Tom West to weigh in so that whatever our votes are in the future, we can feel comfortable with our final decisions. And hopefully whoever wins or loses can feel comfortable with the final decisions that's made. But it's up to the commissioners to either put a vote on the table or to, I think they would need to vote to adopt the amendment.
Mayor, if I may.
Or the other option is to vote to defer.
Mayor?
Yes, Commissioner Gossett, go ahead.
Question. I'm we've heard from the authoritative sources here. The building inspector and the city solicitor have stated clearly that this does not change current practices. So I'm curious as to know what additional practices could come forward from conversations. Now, I certainly have been supportive for quite a long time of looking at what I refer to as development zones. And I think we have the perfect opportunity to look at that with the Baltimore and Wilmington Avenue redevelopment areas and look at incentives, and that it's a give and take in the sense of adjusting the FAR for maybe ground floor retail, these types of things. But these are very intricate and long-term solutions that need a lot of information. As Commissioner Gay said, we've been working on this for 2 years to get to this point, and people still have questions. I think it is an action that again, when the CDP comes out, there may be other ideas that we should look at and we should review, but to leave us with the open aspect of additional challenges because we haven't addressed the commercial gross floor area as we have addressed the residential floor area, that's open to another lawsuit in many regards. And I've read the letters and heard many comments today. that we should delay this amendment and others relating to the zoning. But I believe that this would really be a grave mistake. You know, the code was originally written in the 70s. If I owned a house that was built in the 1970s and there was a broken window or a leaking roof or something else, a siding piece that needed to be repaired, I think it would be illogical and foolish to say that I'm not going to repair this now. I'm going to wait till the whole thing just entire needs repair before I do anything. And I'm entirely in favor of a complete review and revision to our code. And I think that there is some action been taken by the city manager to begin that process. But that's going to take a minimum of 18 to 24 months to do that. It can take years with proper public comment, proper investigation with our own city planner, with our planning commission, et cetera. I mean, look how long we've taken for the CDP to bring things forward. And we've always been accused of kicking the can down the road and not doing anything and thinking about it and thinking about it. I think that with the elections of the past 2 years, we have certainly seen what the citizens and residents of Rehoboth Beach want, and that is to maintain the character and the design of our community. Again, this is a clarification of what we've already been doing. Now, agreed, there is opportunity for architectural review, which I was a member of the Architectural Review Task Force, which people didn't want to. We brought that forward. There was 18 months that we worked on that, brought it forward, and there was no appetite for that. So I don't know what there is going to be an appetite for that in the next year or 2 years when the CDP comes out. But this is an immediate repair or clarification of what we're doing. And I just think that this is an opportunity that we need to take and act upon. Again, I think, and looking again at election results and what's going on in the city and the pressures that we're experiencing around the county with development and too much traffic and too much infrastructure not being maintained, that we need to look at what we're doing here in Rehoboth. And agreed, there's a long-range plan that really needs to look at, and the CDP may address that. But this is one particular small aspect of what we need to do and to maintain what we're going forward. Two court cases have upheld how we're doing it, and I don't see any reason why we shouldn't agree or understand what the court cases are saying and go forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Respectfully, I would say if this is a clarifying ordinance and there's not going to be any different interpretation today versus tomorrow, if it's not passed, and no different interpretation if it is passed tomorrow, then what's the harm in asking our city planner to weigh in on it? Commissioner LeGree?
I'm tired of kicking the can down the road. I totally agree with Commissioner Gossett. Aesthetics, until we get an architectural review committee, aesthetics is totally up to the developer and their architect, and no other influences. And as I repeat, as a commissioner, I'm fighting the creep of bulk, size, scale every day to maintain the brand of our city. It's time we clarify this and get it put to bed and stop kicking the can down the road. I'm ready to vote today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Commissioner Sharp. Commissioner Sharp.
Mayor, I've not been part of your discussions for the last 2 years, but I can imagine how frustrating it is to get to this point today and be looking at some additional time. The information that's been presented to me that hinges on we need to protect our city by removing ambiguity and having, in turn, less litigation expense, remove a patchwork approach by fixing this. We're making no changes to calculations, is what I have been offered by experts. And if you could build it yesterday, you can build it tomorrow. And I have to trust this information, and I don't have any reason to distrust it. So if we delayed it, in my opinion, it would be for no longer than 30 days for a November but I keep coming back to what's going to be different from what we have been given today, tomorrow.
Mayor,
Yes, Commissioner.
I'd like to make a motion for an ordinance to amend Chapter 270 zoning of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 2001, by amending Section 270-4 relating to gross floor area.
And Commissioner, would that be with the amendments that I discussed earlier?
With the amendments that the city solicitor brought up earlier on lines 167, 68, and also lines 174.
Correct.
For clerical corrections.
Can you read those again, or do we not need to?
I'll do it just for clarity. I'll read them. So at line 168 or 167, it would include, gross floor area would include elevators, elevator equipment rooms, and elevator shafts, and the addition would be on all levels at and above grade. Then at line 174, it currently says open area. This is areas that are excluded from gross floor area. Open areas such as, but not limited to, parking lots, loading zones, and driveways, if uncovered, would be amended to open areas not defined in subsection E, such as, but not limited to, parking lots, loading zones, and driveways, if uncovered.
Commissioner Gossett, would you mind repeating your motion?
An ordinance to amend Chapter 270 zoning of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 2001, by amending Section 270-4 relating to gross floor areas with the amendments just reviewed again by City Solicitor Mandalis.
Thank you. We have a second?
I second that motion, including the amendments.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Patrick Gossett and a second by Commissioner Jay Legree to amend Chapter 270 zoning, specifically amending sections 270-4 relating to gross floor area, including two amendments as just articulated, and we're talking about the version dated September 27th, 2021. Is there any additional discussion? I want to remind you that when you vote, you need, because this is a zoning matter, you need to give a rationale. You can always refer to the rationale of somebody that came in front of you if you choose. With that, we're going to start off with Commissioner Gay.
I vote aye because I want Mr. Janus to have the tools he needs when he comes to work on Monday morning. And without this ordinance, I don't think he has that. I think he's still stuck in a quagmire of ambiguity. And I don't wish that on anyone. And also, as I said earlier, I believe we should finish what we started. This process did begin actually in a former administration and with a few different commissioners, but it began nevertheless, and it was very productive, and we're getting to an end point. And I can't wait to move on to do other things in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Bennett?
I vote aye as well for similar reasons as Commissioner Gay, also due to clarifying the ambiguity and for the trust that the information that I received, that this was simply clarification of the current code rather than a wholesale change. I'm comfortable with voting aye.
Commissioner Sranowski?
I vote no for the reasons that I do not believe that some of the things that are included in Section E, such as porches, balconies, decks, patios, and courts and elevator shafts, have not been included in the past. And some of those things, as Mr. Kaufman mentioned, should not be included in this, as they do not change the bulk and the volume of the building.
Thank you. Commissioner Gossett?
I vote aye, as for earlier comments made by Commissioner Gay. And also, I think it certainly avoids further litigation for the City of Rehoboth Beach, thus saving taxpayers lots of money.
Thank you. Commissioner Legree?
I vote aye for reasons given by Commissioner Gay, Bennett, and Gossett, and for reasons that Commissioner Sharp is going to give. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Sharp?
Based on the accuracy of all the evidence that's been presented today and is available to the public, that we will be able to protect our city by removing ambiguity from additional legal expenses, that we are making no changes to calculations. And primarily, if you could build it yesterday, you can build it tomorrow. I vote aye.
And the chair votes no, only because he would like to wait and have Tom West, our city planner, weigh in. And with that, the motion carries 5-2. Congratulations, Commissioners Gossett and Gay, for all your work on this. With that, we'll go to the next item of business, which is discussion and ratification of action taken at the September 17, 2021 regular meeting, adopting a resolution relating to the opening of bank accounts. You might have deja vu. If you recall, at the September 17th meeting, we talked about opening a resolution, opening bank accounts. We started discussion of it. Before a motion was made, I actually conducted a vote, and we voted unanimously to adopt it, but without having a motion and a second on the floor. So, Glenn, do you want to explain the process, how to resolve that?
Yeah, this, Commissioners, is just a matter of parliamentary procedure. I totally missed it during the meeting and didn't realize there wasn't a motion and a second. So it was clear that your intent was to adopt the resolution. So this is just a matter of housekeeping that clarifies for the record that there is a motion, there is a second. So the motion today would be to ratify the action taken by the Commissioners previously adopting the resolution. And that's all that will go in the record, so there's clarity that it was actually adopted. So we'd need a motion to ratify the action previously taken, adopting the resolution regarding the opening of bank accounts.
I move to ratify the action that was taken on September 17th meeting, adopting a resolution relating to the opening of a bank account.
Second.
So we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Sarnowski and a second by Commissioner Sharp to ratify a vote taken set the September 17, 2021 regular meeting, adopting a resolution relating to the opening of bank accounts. Is there any discussion? If not, we'll do a group vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Hold your hand up so Ann can do a count.
Aye.
And it looks like it passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we're all legal, I think. Thank you.
Thanks.
With that, we'll go to the next item of old business, which is consider awards for two particular contracts, water meter replacement and Delaware Avenue comfort stations. We'll turn it over to Kevin Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. 3 weeks ago, we opened bids on the advertisement for the fiscal year 22 water meter replacement contract. And as we mentioned at the workshop meeting 2 weeks ago, we had 3 responsive bids and a parent low bidder of RNC Contractors LLC, who, by the way, was the contractor we used on the water meter replacement contract last year. Their low bid at $277,599.69. And our recommendation to the board and ask for your action to approve award of the FY22 water meter replacement contract to RNC Contractors in the amount of $277,599.69.
I'll entertain a motion for approval of the award as noted in the amount noted to RNC Contractors LLC.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Chernowski and a second by Commissioner Sharp to award the water meter replacement contract for fiscal year 22.
Mayor, that
Yes.
was not me, that was Commissioner Gay that gave the second.
That was Commissioner Gay that made the second.
Yes.
Thank you. Maybe wave your hand when you do a motion or a second.
Got too
Thank
many
you.
Southern accents up here.
Thank you.
Okay.
We'll get that corrected. Commissioner Gay made the second. So we have a motion in front of us for the fiscal year 22 water meter replacement contract to award the bid to RNC Contractors LLC in the amount of $277,599.69. Is there any discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye and holding your hand up long enough that Ann can make a count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have a unanimous vote to award the contract to RNC Contractors LLC. Thank you very much. Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor. And again, 3 weeks ago, we opened the bids on the Delaware Avenue Restroom comfort station improvements, which we're adding accessible restrooms and changing rooms. For that bid, we also got 3 responsive bidders. This one, the apparent low bidder was Kent Construction Company for the amount you can see there. And as a result of that, our requested action today is to approve the award of Delaware Avenue comfort station improvements to Kent Construction Company in the amount of $474,850.
Mayor?
I
Yes.
move we approve the award of the Delaware, sorry. I was reading it from the shared screen.
Oh, sorry.
Mayor, I can make it. I move that we approve the award of Delaware Avenue Comfort Station improvements to Kent Construction Company in the amount of $474,850.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Patrick Gossett and a second by Commissioner Chernowski to award the Delaware Avenue Comfort Station improvements to Kent Construction Company in the amount of $474,850. Is there any discussion? With that, I didn't give the public a chance to talk about the other one. I'll give them a chance to talk about this project, and they can certainly comment retroactively. Is there anybody that wants to talk about either contract? Walter Brittingham? I see nobody else has signed up for that topic, so we'll go ahead and call the vote. All those in favor of the motion to award the Kent Construction Company the contract for the Delaware Avenue Comfort Station in the amount noted, please raise your hand and say aye. Hold your hand up long enough for Ann to do a visual, and that is motion that passes unanimously. Thank you very much. With that, we're going to go to the next item, which is consider committee and liaison appointments. In your support packet, you have a slate in front of you that includes the Animal Issues Committee with all the members in entirety, including the chair. You've got the Audit Committee, Board of Elections, Boardwalk and Beach Committee, Environment Committee, Organizational Liaisons, Personnel Committee, Street and Transportation Committee, Tree and Green Infrastructure Committee. Are there any, the easiest way would be to entertain a motion to adopt the entire slate as presented in the support document dated October 12th. However, that's the easiest way. If anybody has any objections to anybody, then we need to take them one at a time.
I'd be okay with the slate.
Hearing no objections, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the slate of new appointees, chairs and members, and reappointments for a one-year term.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Sharp and a second by Commissioner Ed Stranowski to approve the slate articulated in the support document of October 12th of the committees and liaisons that I read. Is there any discussion by the commissioners before we go to the public? If not, I want to go to the public. Carol Everhart.
No comment. Sorry.
Okay. Let me see here. I don't have anybody else that indicates they signed up to talk on this. So with that, I'll call the questions. All those in favor of adopting the slate as presented, signify by saying aye and wave your hand. Long enough for and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you to everybody that's volunteered to chair or be on a committee. Appreciate it. With that, we're going to go to the next item, which is consider sunsetting of 2 committees. That's the Parking Task Force and also the Bandstand Convention Hall special events thing. If you recall at our last meeting, we talked about the Parking Task Force as somewhat defunct. We changed it from a committee to a task force to say that it would only be viable. At times we give it certain tasks. We haven't done that for a while. We can certainly sunset it now, bring it back at a future date if we have anything to task it. And then the Bandstand Convention Hall Special Events Committee, you'll recall Commissioner Gossett mentioning that's his own committee. And that changes have taken place over the past few years. We've gotten additional City Hall staff that takes care of the convention hall. And we have our own staff that takes care of the bandstand. And they're all capable of giving us recommendations on changing fee structures and et cetera. So we didn't feel that we needed them. If you're in agreement, I would entertain a motion to sunset both of those committee, that task force and that committee. We're going to entertain we will get to public comment in a minute. Yes. Are there any commissioners?
Mayor, I've got a comment as well whenever you want to take it.
All right, Commissioner Legree, were you making a motion?
Yes.
To sunset both of those groups? So we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second before we get to discussion?
Second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Jay Legree and a second by Commissioner Susan Gay to sunset the Parking Task Force and the Bandstand Convention Hall Special Events Group. Is there any commissioner discussion before we go to public discussion?
Yeah, Mayor, my comment is, sorry, I don't think I'm in favor of sunsetting the Parking Task Force for a couple reasons. One, this is the first year that, normal year, I'll call it, that we've had the 12-hour parking. That was a significant change. I think that needs to be evaluated. The city manager has mentioned a couple times to at least me considering starting the parking meters earlier. I've gotten a lot of feedback from businesses the past 2 years that they were experiencing a lot more theft within their stores in the weeks before the parking meters started. And at that time, the theft went down. So I think there's some indication that people may like to see the parking meters start earlier. So I just think all of these things need to be evaluated. And I'm not in favor of sunsetting that. It's the biggest, one of the biggest revenue sources for the city. I think it's important to constantly keep our pulse on it. And while I agree with the current charge of the Bandstand Convention Hall and Special Event Committee is unnecessary with how it's currently structured, with really just recommending fee structures. I do think there's elements related to tourism, PR, communication that it would be helpful to have another committee within the city that focuses on that more broadly than just looking at fee structures. So those are my comments.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you. Commissioner Srnowski, let me respond to that. In terms of the bandstand committee having a new function or something, or you mentioned really, I think, intimated starting a new committee. And if so, then you could bring that forward for consideration or debate. But it still sounds like you might be willing to let the bandstand committee
I'm fine sunsetting that.
go
one.
fallow. In terms of the parking task force, that was considered folding that into the Street and Transportation Committee. If you recall, when Commissioner Caluzzi was chair of that Street and Transportation Committee, that during her tenure is when we changed it from Parking Committee to Parking Task Force. And we all agreed that whoever the commissioners were at that time agreed that she would chair the Parking Task Force. And now I wonder if, do we really want to keep it alive, or do we just want to fold the duties and mission of the Parking Task Force into the Street and Transportation Committee versus separating it? So
I'm perfectly fine with that. I just don't want the purpose and the mission of that group to completely be lost. I think it's important.
no, and again, I think it can be folded into the Street and Transportation Committee, and if that's too much of a burden, then we resurrect the Parking Task Force. We've got, and when we resurrect the task force, if we do, then we would assign new members to it. Commissioner LeGree?
When the city manager appointed Evan Miller to head the parking department, we suddenly had a control of a lot of data and opinions that really mattered. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't make these decisions at the commissioner level when they arise, especially with the help of the information and data from Mr. Miller. So I'm fully agreeable to sunsetting the parking task force. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there Commissioner Gossett?
Yeah, just an additional comment. I think that I strongly support sunsetting the parking committee as parking has become a much more sophisticated revenue source for the city, and with the addition of the smart meters and also other options that we can look at, I think that bringing in more professional reviews and comments and suggestions from our providers of the parking meters that we have would be a much better use of our time, and having professional staff such as Mr. Miller present those to us with actionable items would be the way to go. It's a revenue source that we should look at, but from a professional standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion among commissioners? We're going to go to the members of the public. Walter Brittingham.
Thank you. Thank you. At the last meeting, I had to leave early and didn't get to hear your conversations about either the parking task force or the bandstand, et cetera, committee. But in these days, even with a new public relations person, there's a lot less stuff that comes out from my perception. I speak for myself only. From the public relations persons that are controlled by the city manager, and we hear manufactured versions or nothing about things. And just like the Bandstand Convention Hall Committee, it's nice to have a methodology when it comes to bullet items on the agenda to be able to ask questions, because otherwise it's hard to get a question in if it's not on the agenda. The parking task force is an example, and I brought up in the summer, early in the summer, about the parking standards for businesses, trucks, et cetera, in Rehoboth, and it got assigned to Mr. Miller because I did not know at the time that he had been put in charge of parking. But we've heard nothing more about it, like who has to pay and who doesn't. And I think it's wrong for either of these items, but especially the Bandstand Convention Hall Committee. I think there needs to be a way for the public to go to somebody like Mr. Gossett or to a parking task force person, a commissioner, not an employee of the city that we've never been told their wages or anything else. But I think there ought to be a commissioner in charge of those things so that the people have a way to have input. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Walter. With that, I recall getting a motion by Commissioner Jay Legree to sunset both committees. I don't recall a second.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jay Legree and a second by Commissioner Tony Sharp to sunset the parking garage task force, or I'm sorry, the parking task force as well as the bandstand committee. If there's no further discussion, we'll take a group vote. All those in favor of sunsetting both signify by holding your hand up, saying aye. Hold it up till I count. 1, 2, 3. And we've got a unanimous consent to sunset those two committees. Thank you very much. With that, we are going to move on to, I'm actually going to take the chair's prerogative, looking at the clock. I really want to move on a little bit. We are going to skip all of the waste operational topics as well as the waste ordinances except for F4, which is 227-24 relating to fees for residential collection. And Glenn will, Gene's not here. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Happy to. So this is an ordinance to amend Chapter 227, Solid Waste of the Municipal Code of the City of Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, 2001, by amending Section 227-24 relating to fees for residential collection. I'm going to skip down to the Section 1, where the changes are. So this would be a change to Section 227-24. I'll read the paragraph and let you know what is stricken and what is inserted. 227-24 is titled Fees for Residential Collection, and it says, the city shall collect from the owner of each parcel of residential real estate an annual garbage and refuse collection fee as set forth on the following schedule of fees, whether or not said owner uses the city collection service, and a valet collection fee from any person who elects valet collection service as provided in this article. Said fees will be, and this is an insertion, divided equally into quarterly billings for each fiscal year, commencing July 1st of each year, period. And then deleted is bills will be mailed by July 1 of each year. That is deleted. And then it goes on to read, bills will be payable for 30 days. This is an insertion after a deletion of August 31st. So it will read, bills will be payable for 30 days after the bill date, and penalty of 1.5% per month will be added to said bills after the due date until paid. If any fee is not paid when due, the city may discontinue collection service until paid and may, in addition, proceed for the collection of any of said unpaid fee and penalties by an action in court of competent jurisdiction or in any other manner provided by law. And then the table is there and it's unchanged. Are there questions about those additions and deletions?
And I would just add, commissioners, that we're asking for this. We're trying to get this in with the, as you've heard before, with the water utility billing. This would be a lot more efficient, and the IT director, Mr. Hamby, is working on this now and into the next month. So it would be very timely if we could just get a vote on this.
City Manager Lynn?
Yes.
So what would you be dividing by 4?
The fees as they are currently stated.
Okay. As they are today?
Correct.
Without any change?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, Sharon?
Yeah, there's Ann.
Excuse me, Sharon?
Oh, Ann, go ahead.
I think Sharon may have the paper covering her camera.
Oh, sorry.
There you go.
Sorry, Ann. Thank you.
That may have been intentional. Who knows?
Thank you.
We should all do that.
Are there any, Commissioner Gossett and then Commissioner Gay?
Just a couple of questions on this. when, we said commencing July 1st of each year. So when would the quarterly billing begin for this new approach?
Well, again, we're finished with October, November, December, so hopefully in January 1.
But haven't people already paid their trash bill for this year through June 30?
They have paid their tax bills. This is directed toward their utility bills, their water bills.
Right, but I'm saying of the trash bill, we're trying
the
to
trash
divide
bill,
the
yes.
$300 into 4 payments.
Yes,
but-
that's correct. That's correct.
So we would really, this wouldn't be instituted until
Correct.
July 1 of 2021?
I stand corrected. You're correct.
So,
And just, I mean, I know we're working this through here, but the commencing July 1, I personally always have trouble with a specific date in legislation like this, but is there a reason that, and again, it would be administrative action here in this sense, but would it be better to bring this on a fiscal year beginning in April as opposed to July 1?
Well,
so that the revenues would fall in place with our physical expenditures and revenues?
Well, it's written this way, and it has been assessed this way. I think mainly because it's in sync with what we do now. So that's the January 1 idea was tossed around, but the July 1 seemed to be a better move.
Well, I was saying fiscal year of April 1st. So again, just to keep it in sync with our revenues and our expenses.
Well, that doesn't really correspond to our billing cycle with utility.
And then just one other clarification, on line 27, I guess that is 27, 28, 27. We're talking collection services here, and all in the same sentence. And I would suggest that on line 27, after the word discontinue, residential collection services until paid and may in addition proceed for the collection of said unfee, because we're talking a collection service versus stopping collection of refuse or residential service. Just as trying to make it as clear as possible. We're using collections company and collection of refuse in 2 different manners. So just a suggestion of making it as clear as possible.
So you're just inserting residential in front of collection on the first reference to collection on line 27, correct?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Okay.
And then I know that we've always done it this way and forever, but do we have a specific definition under the cost, the yearly fees there? We say condominiums, rental units, and single-family dwellings. Do we have specific definitions of those condominiums, rental units, and single-family dwellings? Because we have single-family dwellings that are rental units, and we have condominiums that are rental units. So I'm just curious as if we have a specific definition of how those fees are applied. Even though they're all the same fee, do we really need a separation of those then?
I don't believe we do, no.
Didn't look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a definitions in
No.
chapter 227 of this. It's not something that came up in Gene's review. And so no, I don't think we have definitions.
Right.
Again, this is the way we've always done it, but our needs in the city and our residents are changing, and I just don't know that, again, how this is really communicated or applied, and I would just like a little more information to know about how that happens.
Well, I think I know that the billing department deals with it on a regular basis, and pretty much they understand the definition and they relay that to anyone who questions it. There's usually not any any big question of that. So we can delay it further if that's your choice, Commissioner.
I'd just like an answer to the question, that's all.
The question, these are not defined in the code.
Or do we define them in the code, or how we break that out for the three separate uses? Again, as I say, because of the change in our municipality here, that there are single family dwellings that are rental units. Again, it's all the same price, so I just don't understand why we always break it out into those categories, and what is the purpose, trying to make it as simple as possible. If you have trash service, it's X dollars. Doesn't matter kind of who you are or what you are.
Okay.
I reviewed the code. There's not definitions in section 227, or in chapter 227. And I don't think that we're going to make a change on the fly to this without running it by Gene.
Well,
Mr. Mandelis, I cannot hear you.
There's a time component. We need to get this voted on today.
Well, again, we can look at it next month if that's your choice.
Yeah, I have a couple questions too. but I
We've
think we all
got
do.
Jay, go ahead, and then Susan.
You're muted, I guess.
I'm with Patrick. I think we're going to have an enterprise fund somewhere down the road on all of our refuse. I don't know, from Mr. Duke's not here right now. I don't know whether from a fiscal year standpoint, it would be better to start April 1 as we do with our budget, or whether that doesn't make any difference. But I'd like to have that answered. And I've gotten more negative feedback on this fees or refuse than I have on any subject in a long time. I think we need to really and that's, this is not talking about recycling yet, but if we combine all those together, we're gonna have to have an enterprise fund. But so I'm with Commissioner Goss and the mayor. I think we need to keep on talking about this. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, first of all, for a clarification, so it would start next July, Sharon? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess I have a two-part question. One, why are we doing it today then? What's the rush for today? Because you said something about January. And then secondly, it does say in this ordinance, as well as all the others related to refuse, by the way, that it takes effect immediately upon its adoption. So is immediately upon its adoption, and maybe this is a question for Glenn, just means the next time July 1 rolls around?
Yes.
Or is that a problem?
No, that's right. I mean, it takes effect immediately, so we can send it to the code publisher and get it codified in the books. But nothing effectively would happen until July 1, at least under this. Well,
then it does sound like we have time. But rather than just saying, okay, we have time and the meeting's running late, let me throw one other thing out, because this is a big deal that we haven't resolved. At one of our earlier discussions, and I'm sorry for Tim and Tony who weren't here for those, it was a few months ago, but at one of those meetings, and I think it was Kevin who answered my question, I asked about, if somebody comes down in the winter, for Thanksgiving or Christmas or something, and puts out their barrel and they happen to have a seasonal rate, do you still pick up their trash? He says, oh yes, we don't look at, the guys just pick up whatever is out. Because of that, I think we need to take a serious look at not having the two rates. Now, if there were truly a difference in service and people that are using it seasonally, I wouldn't object. But there's only a $25 difference, which to me seems immaterial. But more importantly, if people are allowed to just use it however, and now I guess they know that because we talked about it at our meeting. I don't know that that's fair to the people that pay $300 for the year, because I will tell you that when we first came down here, 8 years ago, I paid the full year rate from the get-go, not because I was here less often then than I am now, but I knew I was coming throughout the year. So I question whether we still need that structure based on the information we got.
Commissioner Sernowski?
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Gay on that front. Also, since the pandemic, a lot of people that were 6-month residents or less are here a lot more now that people are working from home, et cetera. And for a $25 difference, I think it's cleaner to have one rate. But my question is related to item 19, and maybe Jean is the better one to answer this, but it says the city shall collect from the owner of each parcel of residential real estate an annual garbage and refuse collection fee. But my understanding is it's not by parcel, it's by building. So there are multiple, there's multiple fees being collected on, I think, 89 parcels or something like that is my recollection. So I'm not sure that wording is correct.
Okay,
And that might be right.
and we'll take a look at that.
Yeah, I think the only thing that Gene was looking at here was trying to move it to a different billing cycle and
Yes.
didn't really take a hard look at any of these other issues, but point well taken.
Could you all speak up? I'm having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, I was just saying that, Gene was just trying to revise the billing cycle. None of us really took a look at these other issues. They're good points, well taken, but not something I think any of us are prepared to address. I think you're probably right, though, Commissioner Sernowski, that it's probably not the right language to use.
Okay, Mayor, I recommend we take another look at it at the November workshop.
All righty, we're going to, again, we're not going to do any others. We won't take action today. I would highly recommend that for those that disfavor the current billing structure or any of these, that you please bring forward some recommendations so that we can investigate them and validate them. We need to be productive at our meetings, and it would be very helpful that if you have a tier type of tier system for billing for waste, that you investigate it and bring it forward, and that would be very helpful and productive to advancing this subject. Any other comments before we move on? Commissioner Legree.
In order to comply with that, Mayor, we need to have Mr. Dukes come to the meeting, and so we can ask him questions about the billing cycle, about other things beside that. So yes, bring if he'll be here, we can help answer those questions.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
I just quickly.
I'm going to go to the public, by the way, in a minute too.
Oh, well, good, because I know some people signed up today to talk about this topic, and the one thing, the thing that's not good about deferring it, although I agree with that, is we got some correspondence today. We have some people in place. People were sort of geared up for this discussion, and now it's going to be put off. So I think, given the fact that it's already gone on a little, and we're probably going to get more correspondence as we go on, that rather than having us go back and forth between all the agendas, maybe this is a topic that should be created in the document section of the portal so that we can capture all of this information, so we can review it, because we're going to need to see it again.
Thank you. If there's no more commissioner comments, I want to go to the public. Carol Everhart.
No comment, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Dan Slagle or Greer? Maybe not on. Walter Brittingham?
I agree with Susan Gay.
Thank you. Rick Perry?
Yes, thank you. I just think that you need to take some time to look at this further and be sure that parties are being treated equitably. Thank you.
Carol Diefendorfer?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, no, I agree with talking about this at a future meeting. I am one of those people that is paying multiple fees because we have two structures on our property and there are two of us living here. So I'd love to see some equity in how the fees are, handled, especially with not only with this, but with the recycling. And I know that'll be at a future meeting also. So thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Sure.
Suzanne Good?
Have I been?
Hi, Suzanne, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. I just, a minor housekeeping matter which has occurred to me in the, with this preference to bill quarterly, which coincides with the water bills. From my knowledge of one 8-unit condo building, which has a collective water meter, which means they pay, actually they're billed monthly, I believe, for water. It might create more work for Gene and Finance Chief Dukes and the others, because they would previously bill all 8 units $300 each. So the 8-unit building was paying $2,400 to the city for trash and the so-called free recycling. So I'm wondering whether that's going to create more work, but Gene and the others obviously can work that out. I also totally agree with Commissioner Gossett that making a distinction between rental units or whether they're owner occupied or, if they're rental units, there are humans there generating garbage and recycling. If it's owner occupied, same case. So I'm not sure why we want to spend a lot of time worrying about who's generating the garbage. A last minor item, I agree with both with Commissioner Gay and with Commissioner Ed C. This $275 thing, or $25 less than what had been the regular rate, I think has never really been reflected accurately who does or doesn't put out trash Thanksgiving, President's Weekend, So yeah, I agree with, I'll actually quote from Commissioner Ed C. Cleaner to have one rate. So that will help us maybe raise $25 from about whatever it is, 300 or 400 customers. But I just want to present a little information which I've been able to update. I decided for multiple reasons, one of which I'm actually working on a project about the nightmare of this has become for our environment, just the growing population. No one wants the landfills. So I spoke to, actually, in the end, 3 gentlemen who have a combined almost 100 years experience in this field. They're managers. In one case, they manage the entire Delaware Solid Waste Authority operation, which includes the only recycling plant in the entire state, which is at capacity. So they may have to build another one. But in general, this whole discussion about increasing each property owner's rate fundamentally from $300, let's start at the $300, to $435, which is a 45% rate hike, is similar to what went on with the water rates, because you only need a second water tower because you have the 40,000 people here on July 4th. And the same thing, you only need a twice-a-week collection because of the massive, we coined the term mini hotels, whereas in most areas of the country, including suburbs, refuse collection is once a week, and that's sufficient. And in fact, the once a week collection is totally sufficient for a 2 to 3 person household like mine, including when we have guests. So I think we should look at this issue as the residents are not the drivers of the size of the system. And maybe we should get some benefit from having all these tourists here who are causing these massive externalities in the amount of trash they're generating, and ask them to pay. I wanted to compromise, ask them, I thought the residents should only foot about $50 of this upcoming $135 per year recycling fee for the next 6 years. I am aware of some commissioners who think the residents shouldn't pay anything. So the whole $135 per year, which will amount to over $200,000 per year. Oh, it's a bill due to Blue Hen of Long Neck, Delaware. So I think there are a lot of different ways to view it. But at this point, I hope you will give serious thought to why we need such a large operation and whether it should really fall to the people who are here in January in small residential households. So I would appreciate, you know, I know that you need to defer more discussion of it till later. I will close by saying I was one of these skeptics because I read in the Wall Street Journal and in Forbes magazine that recycling is not effective. That if I'm like something like only 10% of the plastic actually gets recycling. Well, what's happened because the price of gas and a barrel of oil are up more than 50% since January, all of a sudden, the output of the recycling plant has become more valuable. So we're at a stage where we need to recycle because it has a payoff for Mother Earth. So the only question is who's going to pay this over $200,000 per year tab for the next 6 years. And I hope you will decide not to have the residents be the only ones to bear the cost of it. Thank you very much, and best of luck with the long agenda that's still to come.
Thank you, Suzanne. Kevin, I wanted Bert next. Can you retrieve him? Thank you. That's all our members of the public that registered to speak on that topic. So again, we'll defer that to a future discussion. It seems like this has generated more conversation than many other topics that we've done. We're going to go into our next topic. What I'd like to do is, because we've got Bert Dukes here, I'd like to be able to him present and go home. So I'd like to do him next, and then we'll end the day with discussion about the disposition of the Beach Patrol and public restroom facility at Baltimore Avenue. If we can retrieve, Bert, do you want to start off with anything, or you want?
Certainly, Mayor. So
Oh, I'm sorry. So our topic is discuss and consider retaining Y River Financial Advisors to advise the city on refinancing outstanding debt at lower rates and at the same or less maturity, and consider authorizing the city manager to seek financing. There's a time component to this, and that's why we're introducing it and voting on it at the same meeting. Sharon, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Commissioners, the Finance Director and I have met with several financial advisors the past, I'd say, 2 to 3 months. And we believe that Y River Financial Advisors out of Annapolis has presented an analysis that suggests the city could achieve a present value savings for as much as up to $1 million. So that's why we're looking at this intently. Mr. Dukes is now in the room, and I'm going to have him continue with his presentation.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Bert. We switched topics around so that you would be next.
Okay. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, so it's important that you speak up because there have been
pull that as close to your mouth as you can.
And I covered the first bullet point, Bert.
Okay, great. Basically, we think there's a significant savings to be obtained based on current rates. Okay, and we've had several conversations with investment advisors, and I believe that Y River Investment Advisors has a pretty good proposal. There are several ways to go about this refinancing, and what we're talking about is refinancing, excuse me, USDA debt. The debt currently is about 2 3/8%. Market conditions today indicate that we probably could get a lot less, and the net present value savings anywhere from $650 to maybe $1 million. What this would involve is we'd be retaining an investment advisor, and our bond attorney who served us in the past is Ballard Spar, and they've handled our previous issues. The cost of investment advisor, we're talking 15, maybe 25,000, depending upon how we structure this deal. But basically, we have $15 million, $15,351,445 in USDA debt. And also we're looking at this Lynch well loan, which has almost a 3% rate. It's 2.76. There's a balance of about $2 million there.
I can barely hear you, Bert.
Okay, I'll try a little harder. We have about potentially $15 or $17 million to refinance. We believe that we can save $650 to $1 million, depending upon what the rates are. And I just want to kind of review the process a little bit. We would retain an investment advisor, and they could do a public offering, or we could submit this for bid to a number of institutions. If we go ahead and decide that we're going to do a public offering, we're going to have to get a bond rating. The city hasn't had a bond rating in, I think, almost 40 years.
Since the 60s.
Yeah. And it's interesting because Kevin Quinn, who was one of the principal in White River, he worked on that offering back in the day. I think it related to a sewer offering, but that they had to do a public offering then because the state of Delaware drinking water and wastewater funds were not in place and were not available. So that was really the only alternative. But what we're proposing is basically to take this debt and structure it in the way we get the lowest savings. And whether we take the whole 15 million of USDA and place it in one piece, or whether we break it up in two pieces, we could get some preliminary information from the potential bidders and kind of get a feel for how that would go. But just to give you a number, in Salisbury, Maryland was served by White River, and they had 7 bids for 15-year bonds. And it produced a true interest cost. When I say true interest cost, we're talking about not only the interest rate on the debt, but also the advisory fees of 1.038%. This was just done in September. So we don't know how the markets are going to move in the next 2 or 3 months, but we believe that if we have the commissioners approve the hiring of these 2 professional firms, that we probably could have a rate locked in 6 weeks. And hopefully there won't be any real significant movement in the markets. And so what's involved? Well, we're going to have to pay our investment advisor. So if at the time that we felt we got some feedback from our preliminary analysis that it was not justified to do this offering, we would be able to save a lot of those advisory fees. We wouldn't have to proceed with the preparation of legal documents, and we'd save that piece. So basically, if there are questions about the investment advisor that I'm suggesting we consider, I guess please ask.
And I guess I'll just add very quickly, the long and short of it is we would be at the same or lower, potentially lower interest rate. We would decrease the time left to pay our debt down. And, you know, we've been doing that on a regular basis now. It's been 4, almost 5 years. So we've been decreasing that debt, and we're looking to make it even lower.
Yeah. We may match the existing maturity of the existing debt. We would not be extending any debt. So whether we decide to go ahead and reduce the maturity slightly, that'll depend upon the discussions, but for sure, we will not be extending any debt beyond the current period.
Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Gossett?
I think other folks had their hands up first, but Commissioner Sharnowski or Commissioner Gay?
You can go, Patrick.
Just a couple questions. Thank you. You spoke, Bert, thank you for the information here, but you spoke about a bond rating. Is that the cost of doing a bond rating, is that included in that 15 to 25 cost of advisors, or is that above that?
We would not be doing a bond rating if we did a issue and a bid process with just institutions. So that's why, I suggested it might be more efficient, it might be better if we do not consider a public issue of the bonds. And it's not uncommon to do that. I was talking to Gina Jennings when she was here recently, the county finance director, and they do the same process. They put it out to a number of banks and they accept the bids, and the results have been pretty impressive lately. So whether you would actually save any money, you may not save any money, you may be getting better rates with the banks. It was also brought up to me that there is a pretty strong demand for Delaware debt. And I guess the banks like to have that. So I can't make any predictions on what's going to happen, but if we were to go ahead and issue this debt today, the savings would be significant. So if nothing changes too drastically over the next 6 to 8 weeks, I think there's an opportunity to have a significant savings over the life of the debt.
And help me understand this better. In refinancing this debt with the USDA, would that be paying that off completely and going through someone else to handle the paper?
Well, that's exactly right. We're basically paying off USDA.
And way in back of my mind, for some reason, I remember, was there the inability to pay off that debt early with USDA as term of the loan?
No, there is no prepayment penalty or anything that prevents us from paying the USDA debt off early, nor is there any prohibition or a prepayment penalty on the Lynch well debt if we decide to do that. Now, there is a prepayment penalty on our outfall debt. Not a prepayment penalty. It's just, frankly, under the covenants, we cannot refinance that debt. So we are stuck at 2%, which is not a bad rate for the duration of the of the outfall debt.
And is there any, or what is the ability, when you say the cost range 15 to 25, it's at an annual fee, I'm assuming.
It's one time just to do this issue.
Is that determined by the savings? And how do we evaluate if they're doing a good job for us, or what is the evaluation of how we evaluate the services of this advisor?
Well, I think the proof is going to be on what we obtain in as far as our rate. What I'm talking about is what they call a true interest rate, true interest cost. And that's just not the cost of the debt. Say the debt, it's kind of like many of you are familiar with annual percentage rate on credit cards and mortgages, where they factor in more than just the interest. And this is exactly what they're doing here. They're saying, we're going to take the advisory fees. They're going to be a component of this debt that we're taking out. However, the net present value of the savings is basically going to be measured by, taking the payments that we have now and comparing them with the payment stream that we're having in the future and discounting that back to present value. So that
and are they then paid on a percentage of those savings?
Well, I'm sorry?
are they paid on a percentage of those savings, or how is this?
They're paid, the advisor is going to be paid a flat fee based on their billable hours. However, they've capped the fees at $27,500. So we will pay, no matter what, we won't pay any more than that. Now, the attorney's fees at Ballard Spar, again, they will be billing us at their hourly rate. I had a brief conversation with Emily Ninen, who's handled our previous offerings for the outfall and for the USDA and all our other debt. And basically, as she pointed out, it's difficult until she knows how many documents she's going to have to prepare. In other words, if we break this up into just one piece, one debt offering, there's less legal work to do. If we break it up in more pieces, and we might want to do that just because we might find that we could pick up a savings on the debt. We've had more bidders, maybe they'd be a little more aggressive, and but we don't know that yet. The fees won't be. Emily threw out a number of about $15,000 today. I think that's pretty hard to hold her to because she doesn't really know what she's doing. But based on, she doesn't know how much work she's going to have to do. But based on past fees for these debt offerings, I would say it could be $15,000 to $20,000, $25,000. We don't know. So, but we wouldn't have the legal fees if we got a bad, bad feeling that the debt wasn't going to be well accepted. So the process would involve basically the investment advisor would be doing some analysis and research and talking to institutions to see what kind of interest they would have in something like this. And if there are any terrible red flags, we could always pull the offering and just stop, and we'd have some fees to pay, but we wouldn't have all the fees to pay because we're not going to complete the issue. But if we do sell the bonds, I would guess that the city's going to have as somewhere in the area of $50,000 for the advisory fees.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I've got next Commissioner Shanowski and then Commissioner Gay.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to weigh in. I have reviewed the analysis by Y River and did sit in on a meeting with Bert and Sharon and the mayor with them. What their analysis is very good. Some of the rates that they've gotten recently with Ocean City and Salisbury, it's impressive. They're very knowledgeable. I think Bert and Sharon did very good due diligence with selecting this firm. And I'm certainly in favor of, allowing them to move forward with engaging officially with Y River. And, and as Bert mentioned, rates are good right now. This is somewhat time sensitive. There's always, the concern that, or the, rates could go up in the next few weeks. So I think this is an opportune time, and I'm really excited. I think we're, $1 million savings, I think is probably pretty probable. And great work to Bert and Sharon on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Gay?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Bert. That was very, very interesting. And I agree, it's extremely timely. I sort of hearing that rates were going to be going up in some, so I hope you can get this done in about 6 weeks. When would it take, would it start in just after the first of the year? Would it start at our fiscal year? When would it go into effect likely?
Well, we probably have these, the bids would all be in probably within 6 weeks. The documents would be finished up shortly thereafter. So we would expect to have all the debt in place by the end of the year.
Okay.
Probably late November.
And the $1 million savings is over the life of the loan, correct?
That's the over, and it's, yeah, and it could be less than that. it might, even if it's $500,000, I think it's worth going for, because if we're going to invest $50,000 in fees to save $500,000, I think that would be something.
But our annual payments will obviously be less.
I don't know. Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah. Yeah.
Because, and where I was going with that is we would have all this information by budget time.
Oh, well, we start on our budget in November, so you really don't get into serious budgeting until January, right? So I would expect to have this debt in place by late November, early December.
Okay.
Deal's done by then.
Right. I'm already thinking of ways to use the money. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, with all the with the debt limit, it's always keeping me up sometimes.
Right.
It's nice to do anything we can to go ahead and manage this debt.
Absolutely. And then I guess my only other point is, at what point would it come back to us? I mean, do you see coming back to us with options, or just?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think in 6 weeks the bids would be in. We're probably talking about 6 to 8 institutions that would be bidding on this.
And that would come to us?
Yeah, well, the investment advisor would collect them and then present it to us for approval. We obviously select the lowest bidder.
Right, but it would come back to a public meeting?
Yeah, oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's all I was getting at. Okay, that's all I have.
Mayor, will you entertain a motion?
Commissioner Legree has a question first. Commissioner Swarnowski, go ahead, Commissioner Legree. You're muted.
So the public can know what's going on here. I understand that Y River is going to assimilate our debt and shop it to banks and other institutions at an interest rate that's going to be determined, and you and the financial advisor will decide what the size of the segments are.
I'm going to follow the recommendations.
Yeah.
And they're going to be doing probably some informal analysis and discussions to see how it might be best to structure this. I mean, if there were institutions that just wanted to buy the whole 15 million or whole 17 million, that would be the easiest way. But I was sort of being conservative. I thought, suppose we go out to bid and they don't want to buy $17 million worth in one chunk. And I thought, well, maybe just to kind of hedge your bets a little bit, consider breaking it up. But if the investment advisor feels that we can sell the whole 17 million in one package, then I'd follow their advice, because they certainly have a pretty good track record. They've done about $5 billion worth of offerings in the last 5 years.
And the fee is a one-time fee, which includes their commission work and the legal work. And from that point forward, we pay the debt back to whoever holds our debt. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Now, the legal fees would be separate. Ballard Spar would send us their invoice, and Y River would send us their invoice, and we would be packaging that into the total debt. And I think it's a good thing to do. The rates are low, and I think the number that I'm really looking for is what they call the TIC, true investment cost. Mm-hmm. And I think it'd be pretty easy to set that number side by side with what we're paying now.
Yeah, and the number you gave a minute ago, 1.038, was in fact the TIC that they happen to be getting now.
That was on the Salisbury debt back in September.
On Salisbury debt.
So I don't know that we're going to be that low. I mean, but even if we're, say it came out that we were 1.5%.
Yeah.
Well, we're at 2 3/8 on that. Yeah. Well, when you have that much money, there's still a pretty good spread and pretty good savings between 1.5% and 2 3/8.
Yeah, I follow fixed securities somewhat, and I agree with Commissioner Gay that time is probably of the essence. We don't have very many weeks before it's going to start going up, in my opinion. So I think the most expedient way to get from point A to point B is the way you're going right now. Thanks, Bert.
Yeah. I'll mention one thing. I mean, we all watch the mortgage market and the 10-year bond and 30-year bond, but the municipal market moves a little differently. So it's probably not going to be in lockstep with what you hear on the news every night for what the rates are. I mean, it's all going to depend. There's a lot of other forces in play, and you know, banks are, you know, I think in Delaware there might be quite a few banks that would like to hold some City of Rehoboth debt.
Sure. I read the proceedings of the Federal Reserve, and I agree with you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? If not, Commissioner Czerniawski?
Sorry, Mayor, I'm just trying to move us along. I'm hungry. I move we authorize the city manager to retain Y River Financial Advisors to advise the city on refinancing outstanding debt at lower rates. Is that good enough as a motion?
And authorizing the city manager to seek refinancing, right?
Correct, yep.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Ed Czerniawski and a second by Commissioner Tony Sharp to authorize city manager to retain Y River Financial Advisors to advise the city on refinancing outstanding debt and authorizing the city manager to seek refinancing. Is there any further discussion? I see there's nobody on our registered speakers that signed up to talk on this. Is there any additional discussion of the commissioners? If not, we'll try a group vote. And if there's any objections, we'll take an individual vote. All those in favor of authorizing the city manager as noted, signify by raising your hand. Hold it up long enough for Ann to do a count. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. And the vote is unanimous. Thank you very much. With that, it's a late hour. I would love to finish the conversation about the beach patrol and the public restroom disposition. I don't know, of course, what the duration of the conversation would be, half hour to 45 minutes. But I'll leave it up to the pleasure of the commissioners. You know, if we don't do it now, we've got to do it later, and our agendas are not getting any shorter. Is there any consensus to keep on going?
Mayor, I feel that this is a very large and important issue of many facets that need to be discussed, and kind of shortchanging this subject matter with limiting to 30 or 45 minutes conversation would not be in the best interest of our constituents.
Well, I'm not saying we're limiting it. I'm saying that I'm willing to go till it's done, but that could be anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour plus.
I'm not. I'm not willing to go for an hour or an hour and a half or 2 more hours on this subject. And I believe Commissioner Gossett is correct. It is so important. It should be positioned on an agenda where the discussion takes place much earlier in the meeting.
Well, we might, what I might have to do is consider a special meeting or something, looking at our agenda list going forward. So if you don't mind, we'll go with that program there. Thank you very much. With that, we'll go to the next item of.
I think that's it.
Yeah, well.
Well, no, there is commissioner announcements. I would like to have at the November workshop, preferably committee discussion about committees and what their mission statements are, review them, and have them present what some of their topics are that they hope to, potential topics are to talk about, so that the commissioners can have a say-so in them. So that could be coming up. Are there any other commissioner announcements or comments? Commissioner Sharp?
I just have one. I totally appreciate what you're trying to do, which is get the commission, the committees and so forth to come and talk about their missions. But I think it would probably behoove us that as the more important topics, not that these are not as important, but the more time sensitive and hefty agenda items come before
lesser
things.
weight topics. I understand.
It's just my opinion.
Yep, that's good. Commissioner Gay, then Commissioner Srnowski.
I actually have a couple of things, but just picking up on what Commissioner Sharp just said, isn't some of that driven by what's old business and what's new in terms of the agenda? Do we have to have a certain, because when the trash comes back, it's going to be old business, so it'll be first again. I just, anyway, doesn't matter. I have two things I want to say, and I'll try to be quick, but they're both really important. First of all, I want to thank Commissioner Legree for making the statement earlier when we were talking about GFA that he's tired of kicking the can down the road, because I feel like finally today we've reached a point where we can move forward. So I thank you all who voted in favor of the ordinance so we can do that. And I would like very much to start a discussion of a thorough review of our zoning code. We have planning expertise now, and I know the mayor wants his expertise, wants him to weigh in. We have a lot of other resources we can bring to the table, including the architecture review manual that Patrick mentioned. We will soon have a draft of the CDP, and I hesitated suggesting this because that is supposed to be the driver of it, and I didn't want to get ahead of it. However, I believe I'm hopeful that we'll have a draft ourselves within a few weeks, and I feel like we can set the stage now and be ready to jump into it as soon as we have that draft CDP. But what I'd like to do is look at all elements, including parking, and take stock of where we are and where we need to be, looking at the redevelopment for Wilmington and Baltimore Avenue based on potential zoning changes and creating redevelopment zones, and looking at aesthetics and all the things that have come out both today and in discussions that I have had. I think it's time to start having a real conversation, and I'm ready to move forward. So I would hope we could have some sort of preliminary discussion at the November workshop.
Thank you.
That's well, I got another one. Now you're really good. Speaking of special meetings, I would also like to move the tree ordinance forward. And I just heard you say, so I'm going to make your life really not very, I'm not going to help. I'm not going to improve things, because you were talking about having a separate meeting to talk about the lifeguard stations. And in the past, we've talked about having a separate meeting to talk about the tree ordinance. It's being reviewed now by the draft has kind of been compiled based on all the feedback I've gotten. There's still a couple people looking at it, but I want to see that maybe sometime in November as well, if we can do it.
All right, we've got a full calendar, don't we? Commissioner Srnowski.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, my only, I'm sitting here thinking about the agenda today, and we had a lot of interested people from the public wanted to talk about the recycling and refuse. And I think that when we have topics like that are gaining a lot of interest in the public, we should just have a special meeting. It's unfortunate that people were waiting for hours to talk about a subject that we then defer. I just don't think it's fair to the public. And I think we need to be a little bit more respectful and diligent on these topics and maybe we just break them out and have a special meeting. But I think as we keep having longer and longer meetings, we need to be considerate of other people's time.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Any other commissioners' announcements? If not, review future meeting dates. Our next workshop is November 8th. That's a Monday at 9 a.m. Any other comment period?
Mayor, we do have a special meeting on the 26th, correct?
That is a special meeting for us, yes.
An executive session, right?
Correct.
Okay.
If there's no further commissioner comments, I want to thank everybody, and this meeting is adjourned at 5:39 p.m. Thank